Chapter 437. The sword in Chu Fengmian's hand slowly moved. The tip of the sword in his hand turned blood red as he activated his massacre sword art. Chu Fengmian's eyes turned red in an instant. It was definitely the color of blood. Exterminate. The tip of the sword descended. The moment the sword descended, the entire horizon turned blood red. The descent of the sword seemed to have turned the entire world into a purgatory. It was a true massacre sword. After Chu Fengmian's massacre sword art reached great completion, this was the first time he attacked. Endless blood-red light flashed. The body of the Su family's old ancestor began to shatter bit by bit under the sword. Boom! 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 The entire void fell into an endless rumble. The body of the Su family's old ancestor was completely shattered by the massacre sword art. The body of the Su family's old ancestor abruptly shattered in the void, turning into a cloud of blood mist. Chu Fengmian waved his hand and collected the cloud of blood mist, fusing it with the primordial massacre god's phantom behind him. Although the primordial massacre god's phantom had reached great completion, the more essence blood it absorbed, the more powerful it would become. Just now, Chu Fengmian's sword had completely annihilated the Su family's old ancestor. The might of the massacre sword art could be seen at a glance. Let's go! With a thought, Chu Fengmian directly returned to the Su family. He had already obtained the Heaven Origin Spirit Pill. Chu Fengmian had come to the Su family for the qualification to enter the Northern Sea Academy. The Su family had schemed against Chu Fengmian for a long time, but in the end, Chu Fengmian had obtained the Heaven Origin Spirit Pill. This was a great harvest. However, Chu Fengmian didn't plan to consume the Heaven Origin Spirit Pill right now. After all, he didn't have 100% confidence that he could break through the divine power realm and become a saint if he rashly consumed it. Chu Fengmian could feel that his divine power realm bottleneck was much more terrifying than the majority of people's life and death calamities. It might even trigger a heavenly tribulation. Chu Fengmian had to be careful. When a person stepped into the life and death realm, it was because they were too heaven-defying. Their strength would be envied by the heavens, and a life and death calamity would descend upon them. Chu Fengmian's current strength had already reached the second layer of life and death realm. Once he chose to break through to the divine force realm, the heavens would definitely send down a heavenly tribulation. Therefore, Chu Fengmian would not choose to break through rashly unless he had absolute confidence. He put away the Heavenly Origin Spirit Pill and returned to the Su family. Chu Fengmian silently returned to the Su family without being detected by anyone. Chu Fengmian, you're finally back. In the room, Hanueli was relieved to see Chu Fengmian return. She had naturally guessed that Chu Fengmian had left to deal with the Su family's ancestor. How is it? Are you all right? Of course. Chu Fengmian smiled. With a move of his palm, the heavenly Yuanshan pill appeared in his hand. The moment the Tian Yuan divine pill appeared, the entire room was filled with a medicinal fragrance. Even Tuoba Ding, who was cultivating nearby, woke up when he smelled the medicinal fragrance. What kind of pill is this? How can there be such a pure medicinal fragrance? Just smelling it makes my body feel much more relaxed. Tuoba Ding said in astonishment. This medicinal pill was definitely of a higher grade than any medicinal pill he had ever seen. This is the Heavenly Yuanshan pill? Hanueli looked at the Heavenly Yuanshan pill in Chu Fengmian's hand and couldn't help but cry out in surprise. She knew that the Su family's ancestor was refining the Heavenly Yuanshan pill. However, this was the first time she had seen it. Heavenly Yuanshan pill? The legendary Heavenly Yuanshan pill that could allow a life and death expert to break through a level? Hearing this name, Tuoba Ding couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. This name was extremely famous. It was likely that everyone knew about it. This Heavenly Yuanshan pill was a pill close to the legendary level. Even he was seeing it for the first time. That's right. This is the Heavenly Yuanshan pill. Chu Fengmian sneered and said. The Su family's people wanted to deal with me. They were simply courting death. Now that the Su family's ancestor is dead, let's see how they plan to scheme against me. Chu Fengmian said softly. Let's go. It's time to settle the score with the Su family. As he spoke, Chu Fengmian's figure disappeared from where he stood. Han Yueli and Tuoba Ding followed closely behind Chu Fengmian. Su family, inside the main hall. Su family's family head and Su Jin were inside. Their faces were filled with anxiety. What's going on? How could the heavenly Yuanshan pill refined by the old ancestor suddenly disappear? Su family's family head looked at Su Jin and said with a frown. So much time has passed. Why hasn't the old ancestor returned yet? Su Jin said. I don't know. The moment the heavenly Yuanshan pill was refined, it broke through space and left. No one knows where it went. The old ancestor should still be chasing after the heavenly Yuanshan pill. He should return soon. There's no need to wait. It's impossible for your old ancestor to return. A voice suddenly sounded from the main hall. 3 figures appeared in the main hall at the same time. The countless restrictions and formations around the main hall were completely useless. They were directly broken through. Who is it? Su family's family head and Su Jin roared at the same time and looked toward the source of the voice. It was only then that they were able to clearly see who the 3 people were. So it's young Master Chu. May I know the meaning behind young Master Chu's words? Seeing Chu Fengmian's sudden appearance, the Su family's family head and Su Jin both revealed nervous expressions. It was Su Jin who was the first to speak. This is the main hall. It is a forbidden area of our Su family. Everyone, please leave first. If there's anything you need, we can chat again tomorrow. You're stalling for time? Are you planning to wait for the return of your old ancestor? Unfortunately, your old ancestor will never return. Chu Fengmian spoke with an ice-cold expression after hearing Su Jin's words. The people from the Su family had schemed against him for so long. It was finally time for him to lay all his cards on the table. What does young Master Chu mean by that? This little girl doesn't understand. However, today is indeed inconvenient. If young Master Chu has something to discuss, please come back tomorrow. Su Jin looked at Chu Fengmian and said. Su Jin, you don't have to pretend anymore. Aren't you all waiting for that old codger to return so that you can kill us? Chu Fengmian looked at Su Jin and laughed loudly. However, that old codger has already died in the void. Even if we wait until tomorrow, that old codger will not be able to return. Impudent. Chu Fengmian, even if you're an honored guest of our Su family, you still cannot insult our old ancestor today. The Su family's family head shouted furiously. This is our Su family's forbidden area. Leave immediately. Chapter 438. Su Wuqi, there's no need for you to make a fuss here. Chu Fengmian coldly snorted when he heard the Su family's family head's words. You can't escape the responsibility of scheming against this Chu. Chu Fengmian. You! Hearing Chu Fengmian directly address him by name, the Su family's family head couldn't help but become furious. He was the Su family's family head. In the Xiando nation, many life and death experts had to give him face. Now that he was directly addressed by a person of the younger generation, he couldn't help but reveal a trace of anger on his face. However, apart from anger, there was also a trace of astonishment in Su Wuqi's heart. Judging from Chu Fengmian's words, it seemed as if he already knew about their scheme against him. What? Did you think that I wouldn't know about your scheme against this Chu? Seeing the astonishment in Su Wuqi's eyes, Chu Fengmian sneered. He moved his finger, and a drop of demon blood appeared on his fingertip. Seeing the drop of demon blood, Su Wuqi and Su Jin couldn't help but glance at each other. Killing intent could be seen in the eyes of the two of them. It seemed that Chu Fengmian had indeed already known about their scheme. Brat, since you already know about it, this old man won't bother with superfluous words with you today. Looking at Chu Fengmian, Su Wuqi no longer bothered to explain. He coldly snorted. We never intended to give you the Northern Sea Academy's qualification quota. If you're sensible, obediently hand over the Sumeru space right now. Hand over all of your wealth, and we can still spare your life today. That's right. Chu Fengmian, so what if you've seen through our scheme today? Obediently handing over your wealth is the only way for you to live. Su Jing looked at Chu Fengmian. The smile on his face was no longer there. Instead, it had turned into a sneer. His eyes were filled with greed as he looked at Chu Fengmian. This is the Su family. Even if you know about it, do you think that you'll be able to leave here alive? Su Jing coldly snorted. Suddenly, he sent out a burst of spiritual energy. Immediately, countless restrictions appeared in the palace. The restrictions appeared one after another, trapping Chu Fengmian, Su Jing and Su Jing within. This restriction had been prepared in advance. As soon as the restriction appeared, it completely enveloped Chu Fengmian and the other two. As long as Su Jing willed it, the restriction would activate and kill Chu Fengmian and the other two. Su Jing looked at Chu Fengmian and laughed. Chu Fengmian, I'll give you a chance. Kneel down obediently and submit to me. Become my dog, and I'll let you live. What do you think? Chu Fengmian looked at Su Jing and said slowly. Su Jing, I saved your life once. Why are you treating me like this? Naive little guy, there is no such thing as kindness in the world of martial arts. So what if you saved me? That's just your stupidity. Su Jing looked at Chu Fengmian and shook his head. His eyes were filled with disdain as he sneered. In your next life, you should see things clearly. Don't be so stupid. The moment Su Jing spoke, he was already secretly circulating his spiritual power. In an instant, the surrounding restriction was activated. Boundless spiritual power abruptly pressed down on Chu Fengmian. This power seemed to want to suppress Chu Fengmian. It was unknown how long this restriction had been set up. It was personally set up by Su family's ancestor. It could even suppress a first-level life and death realm martial artist. Brat, in your next life, remember not to be so stupid. Su Jing sneered as he glanced at Chu Fengmian. Is that so? Seems like you really think that you can defeat me? Chu Fengmian suddenly laughed and glanced at Su Wuqi and Su Jing. His gaze was as though he was looking at two dead men. Did you think that I dared to come here without making any preparations? Originally, I wanted to give your Su family a chance. But now, your Su family's destruction is already predetermined. Slaughter sword art. Ancient slaughter god. With a thought, Chu Fengmian's slaughter sword art suddenly erupted. The ancient slaughter god's silhouette suddenly appeared on Chu Fengmian's body. His murderous intent burst out from his body without concealing it at all. His eyes turned bloodshot, as if an ancient god of slaughter had suddenly arrived. Boundless killing intent gushed out from Chu Fengmian's body. Chu Fengmian's aura was completely different from before. It was as if an ancient slaughter god had suddenly descended. You. How is this possible? Su Wuqi and Su Jing were shocked when they saw the sudden change on Chu Fengmian's body. They originally thought that they would definitely defeat Chu Fengmian this time. But, they didn't expect that Chu Fengmian's body was actually hiding such a change. You were actually hiding your strength. This kind of strength. So, you've been hiding your strength from the beginning to scheme against our Su family. Su Wuqi looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly. Wild ambition. It's finally revealed. You hid your strength and came to our Su family. You must be up to no good. But, you're just a wind-resisting realm brat. So what if your strength is strange? I don't believe that you can contend against us. We've already set up a restriction. A mere wind-resisting realm brat can forget about overturning the heavens. The Su family's ancestor shouted angrily. With a thought, a surge of energy was added to the restriction. Once this restriction was activated, it immediately transformed into 3 golden longswords. These 3 golden longswords were all genuine Earth-level spiritual artifacts. Amidst the countless seals, the Su family had fused 3 Earth-grade spiritual artifacts into them. Once activated, the 3 golden swords shot out at the same time and pierced toward Chu Fengmian. Brat, even if you've been hiding your strength, you're still no match for us. The Su family's ancestor shouted angrily. The moment he activated the restriction, he also released all of his strength. Boundless blood chi condensed on his body and transformed into a blood chi spear. Blood chi spear. Blood breaking heaven's secret. The spear contained boundless blood chi and countless resentful spirits roared within it. It was unknown how many cultivators it had killed to condense such a spear. Su Jin also made her move. A blood-red whip appeared in her hand. She immediately lashed out at Chu Fengmian with her whip. Countless martial skills blasted toward Chu Fengmian at the same time. They did not leave him any leeway and wanted to kill him directly. War dragon dances in the firmament. Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed a hint of a sneer. His body suddenly transformed into the appearance of an ancient war dragon. An incomparably huge war dragon claw was formed in an instant, and it slammed out with a palm. Thank you for Xiaofeng's reward. Chapter 439. In Chu Fengmian's body, 1,296 drops of ancient war dragon essence blood erupted at the same time. In an instant, his body transformed into the appearance of an ancient war dragon. There were some special blood scars on each of the scales. His surroundings were filled with boundless blood chi, making him look like a blood-soaked war dragon. Boom! As soon as the war dragon claw was unleashed, the countless martial skills were all shattered before the war dragon claw. The countless restrictions set up in the hall were also completely destroyed by the war dragon claw. Puff! Puff! Su Jin and Su Wuqi were both sent flying by the power of the war dragon claw. They spat out mouthfuls of blood as their bodies smashed into the hall before coming to a stop. The majority of the war dragon claw's power had already struck the restrictions of the hall, yet the two of them were only seriously injured and vomiting blood. Otherwise, with Chu Fengmian's full power, a single war dragon claw would have been enough to completely kill the two of them. How could this person's power be so terrifying? Su Wuqi could not understand how Chu Fengmian's strength had reached such a terrifying level. He could naturally tell that Chu Fengmian had not concealed his cultivation level. There was no trace of the law of space on his body. He was indeed a wind-controlling realm cultivator. In fact, he was an ant that had not even stepped into the Saint realm. However, such an ant had actually neutralized all of his killing moves with a single move. Instead, he had seriously injured him and caused him to vomit blood. To be able to fight across two major realms, this was no longer something that could be described as a genius. This was simply not a human, but a monster. Blood sacrifice. Su Wuqi's eyes revealed a trace of ruthlessness. He suddenly opened his mouth and roared. Suddenly, countless screams were heard from the Su family. Chu Fengmian looked over and saw the countless disciples of the Su family screaming frantically. Then, their bodies all exploded. The boundless blood chi from the explosions frantically flew over and was completely devoured by Su Wuqi. What a ruthless method. He actually sacrificed countless clansmen to obtain power. Looking at Su Wuqi, Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed a trace of coldness. Su Wuqi's methods were truly vicious. Countless disciples of the Su family had been implanted with the devil blood during their daily cultivation. Now, Su Wuqi's move directly released the demonic blood in the bodies of all the Su family's disciples, sacrificing all of them. He devoured the lives of all the disciples of the Su family to restore his power. Such a method could definitely be called vicious. Humph. A man of character is always unscrupulous in his actions. So what if the trash in the clan are dead? Su Wuqi looked at Chu Fengmian, his eyes filled with greed. Kid, you must have come across a great fortuitous encounter. After killing you and obtaining your fortuitous encounter, our Su family will be able to flourish once more. 12 blood gods. Come out. Su Wuqi roared as he condensed a large amount of blood chi. Countless figures appeared beside him. 12 blood gods appeared all of a sudden. Each blood god had the strength of first-layer life and death realm. Adding Su Wuqi's strength, he had already stepped into the life and death realm. In the blink of an eye, 13 life and death experts appeared on the scene. Kill! The moment the 12 blood gods appeared, they attacked one after another. These 12 blood gods came from the same origin. When they attacked at the same time, there was no gap between them. They were much more powerful than 12 life and death experts attacking at the same time. Even if you summon 12 blood gods, it's useless. These blood gods are formed from the purest blood qi. They can fuse with my ancient god of slaughter and increase my strength. Chu Fengmian took a large step forward and charged towards the 12 blood gods. He waved his hand, and the ancient god of slaughter behind him also erupted with blood qi, transforming into a large blood-red palm print. The palm directly smashed towards one of the blood gods. This blood god sensed Chu Fengmian's attack and seemed to have sensed the danger. It also sent out a palm, facing Chu Fengmian. Bang! The palm of the blood god was immediately neutralized. At the same time, the remaining power of the palm smashed towards the blood god. Bang! In front of Chu Fengmian's incomparably great power, the blood god was directly blasted apart, turning into a cloud of blood mist, which was directly devoured by the ancient god of slaughter behind Chu Fengmian. Awesome! Chu Fengmian roared. The blood god was devoured as if he had devoured the blood qi of an existence like the Su family's ancestor. Such pure blood qi was completely devoured by the ancient god of slaughter, causing Chu Fengmian's strength to rise little by little. This made him extremely excited. His gaze immediately fell on the remaining 11 blood gods. As long as he devoured all 11 blood gods, Chu Fengmian's strength would be able to take another step forward. It would only be a matter of time before he broke through to the divine power realm. You! Seeing a blood god destroyed so easily by Chu Fengmian, Su Wuqi's face turned incomparably stiff. He had sacrificed countless disciples of the Su family in order to obtain these 12 blood gods. If these 12 blood gods were no match for Chu Fengmian, he would be finished. Array! Attack together! Blood Fiend Buddha annihilating array! Su Wuqi shouted as he stood next to the 11 blood divinities. One of the blood gods had already been killed by Chu Fengmian, so Su Wuqi took its place. With the power of 12 life and death experts, he formed the unparalleled god of slaughter. Blood essence spurted out from Su Wuqi's body, igniting the power within it. The 11 blood gods also ignited at the same time. Bursts of blood qi turned into hurricanes and formed an array. A powerful force immediately pressed down on Chu Fengmian. He's actually using the Blood Fiend Buddha annihilating array. Chu Fengmian looked at the array condensed in the sky and couldn't help but inwardly mutter. His eyes revealed some seriousness. This Blood Fiend Buddha annihilating array was a true killing move. It was the consummate skill of the ancient sect, Blood Fiend sect. If the 12 blood gods attacked at the same time, the might of this move was enough to kill a third-level life and death expert. The 11 blood gods furiously roared at the same time and ignited one after another. Their bodies suddenly exploded. All the blood qi began to condense in the sky, forming a huge river of blood qi. In an instant, Chu Fengmian's body was sucked into this river of blood qi. Thank you Adago Ryu for your tip. Chapter 440. The power of the river of blood was formed by the self-destruction of the 11 blood gods. Although it couldn't compare to the self-destruction of 11 life and death experts, the might of the blood qi river was still frightening. After all, the Su family was one of the great families of Xiando Nation. Now, they had finally revealed their true strength. They sacrificed countless disciples to condense the blood qi river. Bang! Bang! Chu Fengmian's body was drawn into the blood qi river. Endless blood qi pounded against Chu Fengmian's body, producing banging sounds as if it was hitting metal. Behind Chu Fengmian, the primordial slaughter god shrouded his body, resisting the erosion of the endless blood qi. Brat, let's see how long you can resist. Su Wuqi looked at Chu Fengmian and coldly snorted. With a thought, he urged the power of the blood qi river to wash over Chu Fengmian. Inside the blood qi river, Chu Fengmian was enduring the erosion of the blood qi at every moment. The power of each erosion was enough to kill a pinnacle saint. The ancient god of slaughter behind him hissed under the countless scouring. Its body was completely locked in the long river of blood, unable to move. Chu Fengmian was a little surprised that Su Wuqi could erupt with such power. It seemed that if Chu Fengmian hadn't lured the Su family ancestor into the depths of the void, Chu Fengmian wouldn't have been a match for him if the Su family ancestor cooperated with the Blood Qi River. He might even have been trapped in the Blood Qi River, making it difficult for him to escape. A great family with 1,000 years of inheritance like this does have some tricks up its sleeve. I can't underestimate it. Chu Fengmian muttered in his heart. As he sensed the power of the Blood Qi River, the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. Although the Blood Qi River was powerful, it wasn't without its weaknesses. The Blood Qi River should have been formed by the power of the 12 blood gods, but now, it only contained the power of the 11 blood gods. One of the blood gods had already been subdued by Chu Fengmian. Although the power of one of the blood gods had been replaced by Su Wuqi was still a blood god. However, Su Wuxian was not a blood god. He could not completely sacrifice himself. He could only sacrifice a portion of his power. This gave Chu Fengmian an opportunity. You want to trap me with this tiny river of blood? Chu Fengmian let out a long cry. Sword Art of Massacre. The scarlet flame sword abruptly appeared in his hand and he slashed out. The sword slashed out and slashed at the river of blood Qi. The tip of the sword accurately slashed at the deepest part of the river of blood. All of a sudden, the river of blood was scattered. The strand of sword Qi struck the missing part of the river of blood, causing it to flow backwards and split apart immediately. Countless wisps of bloody aura split into 11 independent blood gods. Ah! Oh no! Su Wuqi cried out. When he saw this, his face turned extremely pale. One of the blood gods had just been killed by Chu Fengmian, so there was a loophole in the river of blood. It was a weakness. Now, Chu Fengmian's sword strike just happened to hit that weak point. It immediately scattered the river of blood and turned it into 11 blood gods. Blood Fiend Buddha destroying array. Gather again. He hurriedly urged his power, wanting to combine the power of the 11 blood gods again. If the 11 blood gods were separated, they would be defeated by Chu Fengmian one by one. Only by joining forces could they contend against Chu Fengmian. Wishful thinking. Chu Fengmian snorted coldly. How could Chu Fengmian give Su Wuqi a second chance? He waved his hand, and the battle dragon claw suddenly appeared. With a swipe of the claw, 3 of the blood gods were instantly shattered. They turned into extremely pure blood energy and merged with Chu Fengmian's body. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's body moved. The scarlet flame sword in his hand slashed out twice, completely killing the 2 blood gods in front of him. They were then devoured and refined by him. Of the 12 blood gods, 5 were killed in an instant. Including the one killed by Chu Fengmian earlier, there were now 6 blood gods dead. That was half of their number. Although the remaining 6 blood gods had already joined forces, they were no longer able to do much. Your Su family's patriarch has been killed by me. Now, it's your turn. Chu Fengmian looked at the 6 blood gods, laughed, and rushed toward them. Against the combined power of the 12 blood gods, Chu Fengmian had to retreat a little, but there were only 6 of them left. Chu Fengmian did not care at all. He suddenly attacked, and the sword in his hand slashed out again. Bountiful lush sword art. Chu Fengmian moved the sword in his hand and slashed out. The 6 blood gods sensed the danger and attacked together, unleashing the ancient blood sacrifice to the common lives. However, the power of the 6 blood gods was not even half of what it was in their heyday. Although they attacked together, they were still forced back by Chu Fengmian's sword. Bang! Bang! 2 of the weaker blood gods were directly destroyed by this force. Another 2 blood gods were killed by Chu Fengmian. Little bastard. This old man will fight you to the death. For blood gods. Refine, burn, and explode. Su Wuqi looked at Chu Fengmian with a crazed expression. With a roar, he grabbed the 4 blood gods and slammed them toward Chu Fengmian. The spiritual energy in Su Wuqi's body and the 4 blood gods became chaotic at the same time, erupting with all their power. Self-destruction? Chu Fengmian snorted when he saw Su Wuqi's action. Su Wuqi, the patriarch of the Su family, was forced to self-destruct. The power of the four blood gods merged into his body at the same time, causing his body to swell incomparably. He looked like a ball. The moment he got close to Chu Fengmian, the ball suddenly exploded. Boom! Boundless power swept towards Chu Fengmian. If it were a life and death expert who self-destructed, I might be a little afraid. But you're just a peak saint who hasn't passed the Great Tribulation. Even if you self-destruct, you can't hurt me. Die for me. Chu Fengmian communicated with the sword embryo in his heart, and a force of fortune appeared in his palm. Fortune, battle dragon bloodline, and ancient killing god. The three forces gathered in Chu Fengmian's palm at the same time. Chapter 441. Break! Chu Fengmian struck out with his palm, and the incoming wave of spiritual power was instantly destroyed without a trace. Countless bursts of spiritual power disappeared without a trace under this palm. All that was left was a ball of pure blood qi, which Chu Fengmian swallowed with a wave of his hand. At this point, the two powerhouses of the Su family, Su Wuqi and the Su family ancestor, had both died at Chu Fengmian's hands. Young Master Chu, I beg you to spare my life. I was bewitched and threatened by my father. No, I was threatened by that old thief Su Wuqi. It has nothing to do with me. Su Jin immediately knelt on the ground and begged for mercy when she saw that Chu Fengmian had killed Su Wuqi. Now that the old thief Su Wuqi is dead, he deserved to die. However, I beg young Master Chu to spare my life. I am willing to submit to you. Su Jin knelt on the ground and kowtowed repeatedly, begging for mercy. He seemed to be very sincere as he kept calling Su Wuqi the old thief. Su Wuqi didn't seem like his father at all. Instead, he seemed more like his enemy. Su Jin cursed loudly. Tuoba Ding and Han Yueli couldn't help but sneer when they saw this. Their eyes were full of disdain. For the sake of survival, this Su Jin was completely shameless. Are you begging for mercy? Chu Fengmian looked at Su Jin with interest. He had rarely seen a martialist with such a character in his previous life. That's right, young Master Chu. As long as you are willing to spare my life, I am willing to submit to you for eternity and serve you as your dog. Su Jin knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. She didn't look like a saint at all. A saint wouldn't beg for mercy even if they were about to die. Su Jin was willing to throw away her dignity in order to survive. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but reveal a look of disgust. You aren't even fit to be my dog. Chu Fengmian glanced at Su Jin, snorted coldly, and slammed his palm down. Chu Fengmian, you are ruthless. Feeling a surge of spiritual energy pressing down on her, threatening to tear her body apart, Su Jin's body trembled violently as she cursed loudly. You talk too much. Chu Fengmian snorted coldly and increased the strength of his palm. Su Jin's body shattered, and his soul was destroyed by Chu Fengmian. Even if such a person wanted to submit to Chu Fengmian, he wouldn't agree. Su Wuqi has quite a few empty rings on him. Chu Fengmian glanced over at the place where Su Wuqi had just perished. There were a few spatial rings floating there. With a wave of his hand, these empty rings all flew into Chu Fengmian's hands. These empty rings were filled with countless treasures and riches. They were all the wealth of their Su family. In one of the spatial rings, Chu Fengmian saw a few black wooden tablets. The appearance of this black wooden tablet was extremely similar to the Northern Mang sacred tablet in Chu Fengmian's hand. The power contained within it was also similar. This is? Chu Fengmian reached out and took out a black wooden tablet. He carefully observed it. The countless runes carved on the black wooden tablet were quite different from the Northern Mang sacred tablet, but they were much cruder. The strength of the person who had carved them was also quite different. This is the Northern Mang sacred tablet of the Northern Mang Academy. Tuoba Ding said when he saw the black wooden tablet in Chu Fengmian's hand. With this Northern Mang sacred tablet, you can participate in the Northern Mang Academy's examination. Oh? With this Northern Mang sacred tablet, I can participate in the Northern Mang Academy's examination. Chu Fengmian looked at the Northern Mang sacred tablet in his hand and nodded. He had come to the Su family for this Northern Mang sacred tablet, and now he had obtained it. Although he had wasted a few more days, it didn't matter. There were still a few more days before the Northern Mang Academy's examination, and it was enough. There are a total of 7 Northern Mang sacred tablets. 2 of them are for me, and the remaining 5 are not very useful. Chu Fengmian looked at the spatial rings and counted them. There were a total of 7 Northern Mang sacred tablets. He and Han Yueli needed 2 of them. Tuoba Ding was an inner disciple of the Northern Mang Academy, so he naturally didn't need them. Young master, don't worry. These 5 can be sold for a good price in the Northern Mang City. Tuoba Ding said with a smile at the side. It won't be a problem to sell each Northern Mang sacred tablet for 1,000,000,009 cauldron pills. Alright, I'll give these Northern Mang sacred tablets to you. Chu Fengmian took out 2 of the Northern Mang sacred tablets and handed the rest to Tuoba Ding. Tuoba Ding had connections in the Northern Mang Academy, so he could sell them for a good price. Now that Chu Fengmian had planted the heavenly death seal on Tuoba Ding, he didn't have to worry about Tuoba Ding betraying him. There are still some materials here. You can sell them all. Chu Fengmian glanced at the spatial rings and took out a few items that were useful to him. He then handed the rest to Tuoba Ding. There were a lot of materials in this batch, and they were the entire Su family's accumulation. In total, there were hundreds of millions of 9 cauldron pills. Chu Fengmian didn't spend any wealth on this trip. Instead, he obtained countless saints' blood essence, demonic gods' blood essence, and a heavenly primordial spirit pill. It was a great harvest. Let's go. We'll go to the Northern Mang Academy first. Chu Fengmian restrained his aura and turned into a wind-controlling realm warrior. His strength was enough to fight against some weak Saint Realm warriors. With such strength, he wouldn't be seen clearly and wouldn't attract too much attention. If Chu Fengmian showed his full strength, those experts would have their eyes on Chu Fengmian. After all, the lower the realm, the stronger the strength. It also meant that there would be more fortuitous encounters. Chu Fengmian didn't want to be targeted every day, so he had to hide his strength. At the very least, he had to step into the Divine Power Gold Realm in the Northern Mang Academy to show his prowess. This time, Chu Fengmian didn't encounter much trouble along the way. The 3 of them went through the teleportation array and headed toward Northern Mang City. Northern Mang City was where the Northern Mang Academy was located. It was a huge city that was bigger than many countries. Another 3 days passed. Chu Fengmian and the others finally stepped into the last teleportation array. They came to an incomparably huge city. Northern Mang City, where the Northern Mang Academy was located. It was the biggest and most prosperous city in the entire northern region. They had finally arrived. From here onwards, we can be considered to have truly stepped into the 9 regions. Chu Fengmian thought to himself as he stepped out of the teleportation array and looked at the huge city in front of him. Thank you for Liuyu's reward. Chapter 442. The victorious martial nation and the Qin Empire were only small places. This Beimang city was the real bustling place of the 9 regions. This was the first time Chu Fengmian stepped into Beimang City. In his previous life, Chu Fengmian had been to all the major cities of the 9 regions. However, he was only a bystander at that time. Now that he had come to Beimang City, Chu Fengmian had a completely different feeling. He now had the strength and was no longer a bystander. In the future, he would rise from Beimang City. This Beimang Academy was his next target. Chu Fengmian wanted to rise from this Beimang Academy. Although this Beimang City is only a city that rose in 10,000 years, it's already extremely bustling. Chu Fengmian's group walked out of the teleportation array and looked at Beimang City. 10,000 years ago, this Beimang City was only a small remote city. However, it had now become the largest city in the northern region. The reason for all of this was the Beimang Academy. In the vast Beimang City, there was only one academy, and that was the Beimang Academy. Chu Fengmian looked around. There were countless young geniuses in northern Mang City at a glance. Wind-controlling realm and even saints could be found everywhere. The victors who could be called kings in ordinary remote countries were nothing in Baimang City. Although they couldn't be said to be everywhere, one could still see a few at a glance. However, life and death realm experts were extremely rare. There weren't many who could truly step into the life and death realm from the divine power realm after all. Life and death realm experts could be considered to have some status in the Baimang Academy. What's going on with these people? Chu Fengmian looked around. Many young warriors were standing in front of an incomparably huge palace. They seemed to be queuing up for some unknown reason. Many of these young warriors had extremely high aptitudes and could be considered as geniuses. It seemed like they were all here to participate in the Baimang Academy's exam. Oh, these people are queuing up to register. 2 days later is the day of the exam. Tuoba Ding said after hearing Chu Fengmian's words. However, young master doesn't need to queue up with these people. I've already found some connections. You can directly participate in the exam 2 days later. There's no need to verify your identity. Yes. Chu Fengmian nodded. Sparing Tuoba Ding's life was indeed a bad thing. At least Tuoba Ding had a local tyrant and Chu Fengmian would not have to waste a lot of time. Chu Fengmian pondered for a moment and asked. Is there any place to buy and sell rare items in this Baimang City? Right now, although Chu Fengmian's strength had reached a bottleneck, he still had to search for some wondrous items that were beneficial to him so that he could use them when he broke through to the divine force realm. With the help of the Tianyuan spirit pill, Chu Fengmian's breakthrough shouldn't be that difficult. However, it was better to be prepared in advance. It was safer to be prepared. There are indeed quite a number of places in this northern Mang City to purchase mysterious items. However, there aren't many that young master needs. Tuoba Ding said after a slight hesitation. In this northern Mang City, there's a black market. Every day, there's a large amount of transactions. There are many things that are obtained by killing people and exchanging them. However, the origins of these things are unknown. Therefore, many precious items are sold at a low price. Young master, you can go and take a look. Maybe you can find something that you like. We can go and take a look. Chu Fengmian nodded and said. This black market was actually a place where fishes and dragons mixed together. There were countless rare items that were passed off as pearls. One might encounter a very good rare item, but one might also be cheated out of all one's belongings. Some people had good eyesight in the black market and were able to buy extremely good rare items, making a fortune in an instant. However, there were some that lost all their belongings. One had to rely on one's eyesight to survive. Chu Fengmian had read quite a number of ancient books in his previous life and was confident in his eyesight. He could go and try his luck. Let's go. Chu Fengmian moved without hesitation. Although Chu Fengmian and the others came from afar to this northern Mang City, with their strength, they wouldn't be tired even if they didn't sleep or rest for a year. Naturally, there was no need for them to waste time resting. Chu Fengmian and the others moved and headed towards the black market in this northern Mang City. The black market was located in an extremely hidden corner in northern Mang City. The roads along the way were complicated. If it wasn't for Tuoba Ding, the local tyrant, it would be impossible for Chu Fengmian to find it. If you want to enter the black market, you have to pay 1,009 cauldron pills per person. When they arrived at the black market, a guard stopped Chu Fengmian and the others. Tuoba Ding was very familiar with this place and had already prepared 3,009 cauldron pills. When Chu Fengmian and the others stepped into the black market, they could hear many hawking voices. There wasn't much order in this black market. Many of the people who set up the stalls were extremely powerful warriors. Chu Fengmian glanced at a few of them and knew that they were people who were used to killing. Their bodies must have been stained with a lot of blood. They killed people so that they could sell their wealth on the black market and exchange it for wealth. Chu Fengmian glanced around and stopped in front of one of the stalls. He pointed at a fist-sized inner core and said, "What kind of demonic beast's inner core is this?" Chu Fengmian looked at the inner core with a blank expression. Even with his experience, he couldn't tell what kind of demonic beast this inner core belonged to. This surprised Chu Fengmian. As an alchemy grandmaster in his previous life, he was very familiar with all kinds of inner cores. However, Chu Fengmian couldn't tell what this inner core was. It seemed familiar, but he didn't know the secret behind it. You want to buy this inner core? Don't ask if you don't want to buy it. The stall owner was an old man at Divine Power Realm level 5. When he heard Chu Fengmian's question, he couldn't help but snort coldly. Don't waste my time. Tuoba Ding was furious when he heard the old man's words. You old man, my young master just asked you a question and you actually, although trading in the black market was voluntary, these words were a bit too much. Tuoba Ding wanted to continue speaking but was interrupted by Chu Fengmian. How much is this inner core? I'll buy it. Oh? You want to buy it? The old man was surprised when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. He thought that Chu Fengmian was just here to ask about it casually, so he couldn't be bothered. However, when he heard Chu Fengmian's words, his eyes revealed a hint of greed. 100 million 9 cauldron pills. If you buy it, I'll tell you what kind of inner core it is. Thank you for Liuyu's reward. Chapter 443. The old man's eyes flickered when he saw Chu Fengmian's interest in the inner core. He immediately shouted out a sky-high price. 100 million? Why don't you just rob a bank? Tuoba Ding couldn't help but say angrily. Although the inner core looked strange, it didn't have the aura of a demon god. At most, it was the inner core of an Imperial Wind Realm demonic beast. A few million 9 cauldron pills was already the limit. 100 million was simply a scam. What? Don't buy it if you can't afford it. This inner core is not ordinary. The old man snorted and said rudely. 100 million. Buy it if you can afford it. Leave if you can't. 100 million, is it? Okay. Hearing the old man's words, Chu Fengmian waved his hand casually. Chu Fengmian opened the empty ring. 100 million 9 cauldron pills suddenly appeared in his hand and he threw it to the old man. At the same time, Chu Fengmian moved his hand and the inner core fell into his hand. Chu Fengmian played with it carefully. Hearing Chu Fengmian's straightforward words, the old man wanted to increase the price. However, seeing Chu Fengmian take out the inner core so quickly, he couldn't help but accept it. He had no choice but to accept the 100 million 9 cauldron pills. Tell me, where did this inner core come from? Chu Fengmian asked the old man as he observed the inner core. The power of this inner elixir seemed to be the inner elixir of a demonic beast at the peak of the wind-controlling realm, but Chu Fengmian could feel an unusual power in it. This is actually the inner core of a lone bull. Hearing Chu Fengmian's question, the old man slowly said. This is the inner core of a lone bull that had reached the peak of the wind-controlling realm that I encountered in a strange relic. I killed it. Lone bull? Hearing the old man's words, Chu Fengmian couldn't help but be surprised. He wasn't surprised by the rarity of the lone bull, but by the fact that it wasn't a rare demonic beast. It could even be said that the lone bull was one of the most common demonic beasts. It was at the bottom of the demonic beasts. Ordinary lone bulls were at most at the peak of the bone-tempering realm. Only a small number of lone bulls could reach the body-tempering realm. And this old man actually said that he got the inner core from a single bull at the peak of the wind-controlling realm. The difficulty of cultivating to the Imperial Wind Realm for lone ox was comparable to a trash without any spiritual veins cultivating to the Saint Realm. This was something that was almost impossible. Old man, you're not talking nonsense, are you? Tuoba Ding frowned when he heard the old man's words. This is Lone Bull's inner core? If you don't believe me, you can check the power of this inner core. It is indeed the power of Lone Ox. The old man snorted coldly as he spoke. His tone didn't sound very clear. Indeed, I don't know why this solitary ox grew to such a powerful state. However, for it to mutate like this, it must have had some sort of fortuitous encounter. This Niden is also extraordinarily large. It is very likely that there is some sort of mysterious item within. Oh? What did he swallow? Hearing the old man's words, Chu Fengmian's eyes suddenly lit up. He shrouded the Niden with his consciousness. In the deepest part of Lone Bull's inner core, there was indeed an extremely strange power hidden within. This power had always been hidden in the depths of Lone Bull's inner core. It was even shrouded by Lone Bull's power, which was why Chu Fengmian did not notice it at first. Now that he heard the old man's reminder, Chu Fengmian deliberately checked it. There was indeed a trick in Lone Bull's inner core. This is the sky crystal? Chu Fengmian's consciousness went deep into Lone Bull's inner core. Suddenly, his expression changed as he sensed an extremely pure spiritual energy within. This spiritual energy suddenly reminded Chu Fengmian of something. The sky crystal. The sky crystal was not a product of the 9 regions. It came from the extraterritorial region and was the condensation of the purest spiritual energy. No mysterious item in the 9 regions could compare to the sky crystal in terms of spiritual energy. The sky crystal was an item that all martial artists in the 9 regions dreamed of. A small piece of the sky crystal was enough to improve a martial artist's body and purify the impurities in their bloodline. For example, although Chu Fengmian's bloodline had the battle dragon technique, he had swallowed some elixirs, so there would definitely be some impurities in his body. The sky crystal's ability was to expel all these impurities. It was enough to allow a martial artist to obtain a perfect body. A fingernail-sized sky crystal was enough for an ordinary martial artist to purify their body once. This sky crystal came from the extraterritorial region and was not an item of the 9 regions. Therefore, it was extremely rare to see. Chu Fengmian did not expect to encounter a sky crystal. There was actually a small piece of the sky crystal fragment in Lone Bull's inner core. Although this small piece of the sky crystal fragment was only the size of a fingernail, its value was probably equivalent to the price of 1,000,000,000,000 cauldron elixir. Moreover, this sky crystal was an item that was priceless. It was impossible to buy it even if one wanted to. This is really a great bargain. Chu Fengmian was extremely excited. He had only heard of the sky crystal before. This was the first time he had seen it. Although he was excited in his heart, he still maintained a calm expression on his face so that others wouldn't be able to see Chu Fengmian's expression. A transaction of 100 million was considered a huge transaction in the black market. It attracted the attention of many people in the surrounding area. A figure had just walked into the black market. It was a young man. This person seemed to be about the same age as Chu Fengmian. He also seemed to be a young talent who came to participate in the Northern Sea Academy's assessment. His strength had reached the 2nd level of the divine power realm. He could be considered as a genius with good aptitude. As soon as he entered, he saw the Lone Bull's inner core in Chu Fengmian's hand. His eyes could not help but light up. He immediately walked in front of Chu Fengmian and spoke. "Kid, sell this inner core to me. This is 200 million 9 cauldron elixir." As he spoke, the young man waved his hand and took out 200 million 9 cauldron elixir. He directly handed it over to Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian raised his head and glanced at the young man, ignoring him. As for the 9 cauldron elixir that the young man handed over, he did not even take it. He completely ignored the young man. When the young man saw that Chu Fengmian was ignoring him, his face could not help but reveal a bit of anger. He directly stood in front of Chu Fengmian and shouted loudly. "Kid, this young master is talking to you. Can't you hear me?" Chu Fengmian glanced at the young man. His eyes revealed a bit of coldness as he spoke coldly. "Not selling. Thank you Ahu Jianwang and Liu for the reward." Chapter 444. This young man was obviously a disciple of some big family. His personality was incomparably arrogant. He wanted to buy the inner core from Chu Fengmian. He was used to being arrogant. Even if Chu Fengmian did not need the inner core, he would definitely not sell the inner core to such an arrogant young man, let alone the fact that it contained a sky crystal that Chu Fengmian needed. "Kid, do you know who I am?" The young man was enraged when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. His tone was threatening. I'm the second young master of the Lu family, Lu Mo. How dare you offend me? Lu family? He's from the Lu family. Some of the spectating warriors couldn't help but start a discussion when they heard the young man's words. He's the second young master of the Lu family. Tuoba Ding, who was standing beside Chu Fengmian, was slightly surprised when he heard Lu Mo's words. He whispered to Chu Fengmian. Young master, the Lu family is one of the families in the Beimang Academy. Although they don't have a high status, their ancestor is an elder of the Beimang Academy. Oh? Chu Fengmian raised his eyebrows and said coldly when he heard Tuoba Ding's words. So you're the second young master of the Lu family? Hearing the crowd's discussion, Lu Mo could not help but raise his head proudly. He said loudly when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. That's right. Do you know who I am now? Hand over the inner core. You're indeed the second young master. You're really stupid. The Lu family? How dare you be so presumptuous in front of me? Chu Fengmian shot a glance at Lu Mo and said mercilessly. Get lost. The Lu family. Not to mention the small Lu family. Even if Lu Mo was the illegitimate son of the dean of the Beimang Academy, Chu Fengmian wouldn't be afraid of him. Chu Fengmian's character had always been one that respected him. If someone wanted to offend him, he would offend them. Even the 7 major sects in his previous life couldn't threaten Chu Fengmian. How could the small Lu family threaten him? It was ridiculous. What did you say? Lu Mo's eyes widened when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. His eyes were full of anger. He thought that once he revealed his identity, Chu Fengmian would obediently hand over the inner core and curry favor with him. But he didn't expect that Chu Fengmian's words meant that he didn't take him seriously at all. He was even scolding him with his words. Damn it. Little bastard, this young master gave you some face. Do you really think you have the qualifications to bargain with me? Lu Mo looked at Chu Fengmian, and his spiritual power suddenly exploded. Since you won't hand it over, I'll take it myself. All of Lu Mo's spiritual energy suddenly shot out and grabbed at the single bull's inner core in Chu Fengmian's hand. The power contained in this palm was not only to take away Lone Ox's inner core, but also to kill Chu Fengmian. The power of this palm strike was merciless. If Chu Fengmian was really a warrior in the wind-controlling realm, he would have been killed by this palm. What a vicious heart! Chu Fengmian's eyes were cold. This Lu Mo's attack was merciless. It was simply a move to take someone's life. First, he wanted to buy it by force. Then, he killed someone to take the treasure. How did he cultivate such a vicious character? This second young master of the Lu family is really vicious. He's the same as the eldest young master of the Lu family. He killed without a word. This kid is also stupid. He actually got into a conflict with the Lu family. Isn't he digging his own grave? Countless onlookers looked at Chu Fengmian and couldn't help but shake their heads. They were laughing at Chu Fengmian's stupidity. A warrior in the wind-controlling realm actually went against a saint. Wasn't he digging his own grave? Moreover, this was a member of the Lu family. Even if Lu Mo killed Chu Fengmian now, it would only end with nothing. No one would offend Chu Fengmian and seek justice for an unknown kid. In the eyes of the onlookers, Chu Fengmian would be severely injured if not killed by Lu Mo's palm strike. But in the next moment, a completely unexpected change happened. Lu Mo's palm strike had just reached a distance when Chu Fengmian's body suddenly moved. Slap! A crisp sound rang out. A clear palm print could be seen on Lu Mo's face. This slap stunned countless onlookers. Each of them looked as if they had seen a ghost. They couldn't believe the scene in front of them. What's going on? This kid actually has the strength to go against Lu Mo? What a fast movement technique. Even I didn't see it clearly. Going against a saint in the wind-controlling realm. This is a peerless genius in the Beimang Academy. This kid actually has such strength? Everyone present thought that this time, Chu Fengmian would definitely fall if not die. No matter what, they didn't expect Luo Mo to be slapped by Chu Fengmian. Even Luo Mo himself was stunned. His eyes were full of disbelief. He didn't expect himself to be slapped by a warrior in the wind-controlling realm. After the shock, there was only endless anger on Luo Mo's face. He was ashamed and angry. He was a saint in the second level of the divine power realm and a genius of the Lu family. Now, he was slapped in front of everyone when dealing with a warrior in the wind-controlling realm of unknown origin. As the second young master of the Lu family, he would be given some face wherever he went. Not only did Chu Fengmian not give him face, but he also slapped him in the face. This kind of humiliation was simply indescribable. "Little bastard, you're courting death. I, Luo Mo, will never let you go." Luo Mo was furious. His face was ashen. Spiritual energy erupted from his body. His cultivation level began to climb crazily, nearing the third level of the divine power realm. This was Luo Mo's true strength. So strong. Luo Mo's strength is probably enough to rank in the top 500 of this batch of newcomers. He might even be ranked in the human ranking. It's very possible. With his strength, there's a high chance that he'll be promoted to an inner disciple in the future. Indeed, the Lu family has no mediocre people. This kid is finished. Luo Mo is really angry. No matter how talented this kid is, he won't be able to resist. After all, he's not a saint. The onlookers couldn't help but shake their heads. The strength that Chu Fengmian displayed was indeed enough to surprise them. It was even enough to shock them. This kind of aptitude could only be obtained by the geniuses that the Beimang Academy focused on nurturing. But no matter how high one's aptitude was, it was useless if one's strength wasn't enough. It was really too difficult for a warrior in the wind-controlling realm to contend against a saint. After all, the gap between them was like a ravine. Chapter 445. Was there anyone in the wind-controlling realm who could fight against a saint? Yes. But in the vast northern region, there were only a few who could do it. Those who could do it were all geniuses secretly nurtured by the major sections. They had to be nurtured from a young age to be able to do it. For someone like Chu Fengmian, who didn't seem to be from the major sects, to be able to do it was already shocking enough. But next, no one was optimistic about Chu Fengmian. Just now, Luo Mo attacked casually and didn't use his full strength. Now that Luo Mo was infuriated and attacked with full strength, Chu Fengmian wouldn't have a chance to resist. Die! Luo Mo took a step forward and the power in his body skyrocketed. All the power was concentrated on his palm. This palm suddenly condensed a large amount of spiritual energy and shot towards Chu Fengmian. The power of this palm was like a mountain that wanted to crush Chu Fengmian completely and crush him to death. Ah, this is the Lu family's ultimate skill, Mountains Crush God. This move's power is probably at the peak of the Earth realm. With Luo Mo's strength, this move is probably able to suppress a saint in the fourth level of the divine power realm. If his strength is slightly weaker, I'm afraid he'll be shocked to death. The onlookers' faces changed and they all retreated, afraid of being affected. Chu Fengmian raised his head and felt a kind of boundless pressure. It was as if an endless mountain range was pressing down on him. Chu Fengmian's eyes showed some contempt and he sneered. "Oh? Want to suppress me? If the sky wants to suppress me, even the sky will be shattered, let alone the power of mountains. Break!" Chu Fengmian condensed spiritual power and punched out. Boom! An incomparably loud roar sounded. Under the astonished eyes of countless people present, the endless power of mountains was completely shattered by Chu Fengmian's punch. The Lu family's ultimate skill, Mountains Crush God, was directly shattered by Chu Fengmian just like that. At the same time, Chu Fengmian suddenly punched out. This punch was directly toward Luo Mo. Even Luo Mo himself didn't expect Chu Fengmian to be able to withstand his mountains crushing God. In the face of Chu Fengmian's sudden punch, his face was filled with panic. Without any time to resist, the punch had already landed on his chest. Pooh! A fist print appeared on Lu Mo's chest as he was sent flying. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. He had lost. The genius of the Lu clan, the second son of the Lu clan, Lu Mo, was defeated just like that. A crushing defeat. They couldn't even withstand one move from Chu Fengmian. This scene was like a sudden clap of thunder that jolted everyone awake. How is that possible? Lu Mo was actually defeated. One move, Lu Mo was defeated in just one move. How strong is this guy? Lu Mo can be considered to have some fame among this year's wretched cry test. He's someone who has the potential to enter the ranking list of young masters, but now he's been defeated so miserably. Countless onlookers were dumbfounded as they looked at Chu Fengmian. They originally thought that Chu Fengmian was just putting on a brave front when facing Lu Mo. They didn't expect Chu Fengmian to be able to defeat Lu Mo in such a straightforward manner. This kind of strength was comparable to the geniuses cultivated by the major sections. There's actually such a dark horse in this year's wretched cry test. To be able to defeat Lu Mo in one move, it seems like he's strong enough to enter the ranking list of young masters, or even the top 100. The strength he's shown now is only at the level of the ranking list of young masters? Chu Fengmian thought to himself when he heard the crowd's discussion. The ranking list of young masters was also a list in the Beimang Academy. It was used to determine the ranking of the outer disciples of the Beimang Academy. Generally, martial artists who passed the test would become the outer disciples of the Beimang Academy. Only a few special cases would be valued by some elders and directly enter the inner sect. This possibility was less than 1 in 10,000. Therefore, most martial artists would first become the outer disciples of the Beimang Academy, and then advance to the inner sect step by step. The best of the outer disciples could enter the ranking list of young masters. Every year, the Beimang Academy would hold a martial arts competition. The ranking would be determined based on strength. The disciples who could enter the ranking list of young masters were the best of the outer disciples. They had a high status and were able to obtain countless resources in the outer sect. In the outside world, they were considered a big figure. However, the ranking list of young masters was only the lowest ranking list. Above it were the Earth ranking and Sky ranking. The Earth ranking martial artists were the inner disciples of the Beimang Academy, while the Sky ranking martial artists were the seed disciples of the Beimang Academy. For example, the Sky ranking martial artists' status in the Beimang Academy was not lower than some elders. They had great power. Although they were disciples, they had already entered the upper echelons and had great power. Although the strength Chu Fengmian displayed was not even 1/10 of his real strength, he could only enter the top 100 of the ranking list of young masters. The foundation of the Beimang Academy was deeper than he had imagined. Even if Chu Fengmian used his full strength, he could only compete with some of the people on the Earth ranking. The Sky ranking martial artists were far from what Chu Fengmian could contend with. The current Chu Fengmian could not be said to have no status in the Beimang Academy, but he could only be considered a small figure. However, Chu Fengmian would sooner or later flatten the Beimang Academy. In the future, Chu Fengmian would destroy the 7 major sections. The Beimang Academy was nothing to him. Second young master. An old man suddenly appeared at the entrance of the black market. The old man's face suddenly changed when he saw Lu Mo on the ground. Get lost. The old man suddenly released his spiritual power and rushed toward Chu Fengmian, pushing away the countless onlookers around them. This is the housekeeper of the Lu family, Lu Xian. Rumor has it that his realm is enough to reach the peak Saint realm, but he has been suppressing it and has not broken through. It's actually this fierce man. Let's leave quickly to avoid being implicated. Seeing Lu Xian's arrival, many of the onlookers hurriedly retreated to avoid being implicated. The people of the Lu family were all extremely arrogant. Lu Xian's arrogance was no less than Lu Mo's. They did not dare to offend such a fierce man. Uncle Xian. Seeing Lu Xian's arrival, Lu Mo hurriedly shouted with joy on his face. Uncle Xian, this is the man who injured me. Lu Mo shouted as he pointed at Chu Fengmian. Lu Xian's eyes followed Lu Mo's direction and looked at Chu Fengmian. Junior, you're the arrogant one who dared to injure the people of the Lu family? Chapter 446. Lu Xian's eyes fell on Chu Fengmian. He was slightly surprised to see Chu Fengmian's realm. He didn't expect Chu Fengmian to be a wind-controlling realm warrior. Lu Xian knew Lu Mo's strength. Chu Fengmian's talent must be top-notch to be able to beat Lu Mo to such a state. However, Lu Xian was only slightly surprised. The Lu family had a place in the Beimang Academy. So what if Chu Fengmian was a genius? Anyone who offended the Lu family would have to die. Boy, no matter where you come from, you've committed a grave crime by injuring someone from the Lu family. Lu Xian looked at Chu Fengmian with a cold look. If you kneel down and destroy your cultivation, I can spare your life and let you leave. This is your only chance. Lu Xian's arrogance was on par with Lu Mo's. Chu Fengmian raised his eyebrows and said coldly to Lu Xian. Are the people of the Lu clan all idiots? Lu Mo was arrogant and despotic, but Lu Xian was even more arrogant than him. The moment he opened his mouth, he wanted Chu Fengmian to cripple his own cultivation. For a venerated martialist, crippling his cultivation was even more painful than killing him. If people respect me, I'll respect them. If people offend me, I'll offend them. Chu Fengmian wasn't afraid of the Lu family's arrogant people. Little bastard, do you want to die? Lu Xian was furious. His eyes flashed with murderous intent. Since you don't want to cripple your own cultivation, this old man will do it myself and cripple you. Lu Xian's spiritual power condensed into a fist and blasted toward Chu Fengmian. His fist looked ordinary, but it contained 10 layers of hidden force. The strength of each layer doubled. Even a pinnacle saint would be seriously injured by the 10 layers of hidden force. Boom! Boom! The power of the fist was aimed at Chu Fengmian's chest. He wanted to shatter Chu Fengmian's spiritual meridians. This is the Lu family's 10 heavy punches. Its power is extremely domineering. Even if you block this punch, it still contains 10 layers of hidden force. Countless onlookers quickly retreated to avoid being caught in the crossfire. Stop! A shock yell was heard all of a sudden. An incomparably huge palm suddenly descended from the sky. This palm contained boundless power and was extremely domineering. This wave of spiritual energy instantly dissolved the power of Lu Xian's 10 heavy punches. At the same time, a surge of energy forced Lu Xian's body back. Fighting is not allowed in the black market. Lu Xian, you've gone too far. A figure suddenly appeared. It's the law enforcers of the black market. The law enforcers of the black market have appeared. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they saw this figure. The aura of this figure was extremely terrifying. Chu Fengmian could sense that this figure was much stronger than the Su family patriarch. At the very least, he had to be at the 3rd layer of life and death realm. With Chu Fengmian's current strength, he might not be able to contend against him. Zi Xinghe, are you here to stop me? Lu Xian was forced back by the palm, but his face was still filled with anger. This kid dared to injure our Lu family's 2nd young master. He has already committed a capital offense. Are you trying to make an enemy out of our Lu family? Lu Xian looked at the figure that had suddenly appeared, his arrogance still undiminished. Even if he wasn't as strong as this person, he still had an incomparably huge family behind him. No matter how strong this Zi Xinghe was, he was still a loner. Lu Xian wasn't necessarily afraid of him. There are rules in the black market. Killing is not allowed. I'm just following orders. Zi Xinghe looked at Lu Xian and said coldly. Even if you're from the Lu family, you can't break the rules. Take your family and leave. Lu Xian's eyes didn't waver as he threatened. Zi Xinghe, are you really trying to make an enemy out of our Lu family? Zi Xinghe glanced at Lu Xian and said indifferently. We're doing things according to the rules. No matter who it is, you can't break the rules. I don't care about what happens in the black market, but you're not allowed to make a move here. If you dare to make a move again, I'll throw you out. Lu Xian frowned. He glanced at Zixinga and then at Chu Fengmian. His eyes were filled with unwillingness. His gaze towards Chu Fengmian was filled with malice. He turned his head and said to Lu Mo, let's go. Lu Xian's strength was far from being able to contend with Zixinga. If he continued to be in a stalemate, he would only embarrass himself. However, the resentment in his heart didn't dissipate because of this. Instead, it grew stronger. Lu Xian turned his head and looked at Chu Fengmian as he said viciously. Kid, when you enter the Northern Sea Academy, this old man has 10,000 ways to deal with you. And you, Zixinga. This old man will remember today's matter. Lu Xian snorted coldly and left with Lu Mo. With the departure of Lu Xian and Lu Mo, the black market calmed down once again. This is one more problem. Hearing Lu Xian's words, Chu Fengmian understood that Lu Xian would definitely deal with him when he entered the Northern Sea Academy. However, Chu Fengmian didn't care. There were many people in the world who wanted to deal with him. The Lu family was just one more. Young man, the people of the Lu family have always been narrow-minded. If you want to enter the Northern Sea Academy, you have to be careful. The law enforcer of the black market, Zixinga, looked at Chu Fengmian and kindly reminded him. He saw that Chu Fengmian's aptitude was good and that he was a promising talent. He didn't want Chu Fengmian to be destroyed in the hands of the Lu family. Thank you for the reminder. Chu Fengmian looked at Zixinga and said. No matter how strong the people of the Lu family are, they can't do whatever they want in the Northern Sea Academy. Chu Fengmian's words were filled with endless confidence. Even if the people of the Lu family wanted to deal with him, Chu Fengmian wasn't afraid at all. After saying that, Chu Fengmian and his group turned and left. Looking at Chu Fengmian's back, the crowd started to discuss spiritedly. I'm afraid that this person will become the dark horse of this batch of newcomers. This batch of newcomers is interesting. There's actually such a person. So what if his aptitude is high? If he offends the Lu family, he will definitely be targeted in the Northern Sea Academy. So what? With such aptitude, if some elders take a fancy to him, the Lu family won't dare to offend him. Let's go. We also have to prepare for the assessment. If we can't pass the assessment, this trip will be in vain. This assessment qualification can be bought at a high price. We can't just waste it. After discussing for a while, the cultivators dispersed. Chapter 447. After Chu Fengmian and his group left the black market, they arrived at an inn and stayed there. Chu Fengmian returned to his room and set up countless restrictions and arrays, completely concealing everything in the room. Chu Fengmian sat cross-legged on the bed and glanced around. Then, he took out Dunyo's inner core and observed it. The power of the sky crystal has been completely integrated into the inner core. It seems that Dunyo must have devoured the sky crystal. That's why he grew to such a level. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself as he looked at Dunyo's inner core in his hand. The sky crystal could even purify a person's bloodline. Dunyo could easily enter the wind-controlling realm after devouring it. This was because Dunyo's aptitude was too poor. If it was a stronger warrior, he might have directly cultivated to the demon god realm. At that time, he might really be able to refine the power of the sky crystal. After all, without entering the divine power realm, even if he obtained the sky crystal, he wouldn't be able to completely refine it. Chu Fengmian felt that there was at least 90% of the sky crystal's power left. Dunyo had only used less than 10% of the sky crystal's power to cultivate to such a level. Most of the sky crystal's power was still preserved. This was good news for Chu Fengmian. Although the sky crystal's power had been completely integrated into Dunyo's inner core after being devoured by him. However, it wasn't difficult for Chu Fengmian to refine the sky crystal's power. Let's refine the sky crystal's power first. Chu Fengmian thought in his heart. If the sky crystal was discovered by others, it would probably attract countless experts to fight for it. After all, the sky crystal was a mystical item that was useful to even the strongest warrior. The Northern Mang Academy's foundation was far beyond Chu Fengmian's imagination. Chu Fengmian should refine the sky crystal as soon as possible. It would increase his strength so that Chu Fengmian could have a foothold in the Northern Mang Academy. Thinking of this, Chu Fengmian's mind moved and a flame appeared in his palm. This flame was golden in color. It was the dragon flame. As the dragon flame burned, the inner core began to melt. In a few breaths' time, the inner core was completely melted. An extremely special power slowly condensed and turned into a crystal-clear color. Chu Fengmian could tell that this power was the power of the sky crystal. Chu Fengmian completely melted the lone bull's inner core. What was left behind was the purest heavenly crystal power. Swallow. Chu Fengmian did not hesitate at all. The moment he saw this power appear, he immediately opened his mouth and swallowed all of the power of the sky crystal into his body. At the same time, Chu Fengmian activated the power in his body, the power of creation. Battle Dragon Power. At the same time, he activated it and started to refine the heavenly crystal's energy. The power of the sky crystal was not difficult to refine. Chu Fengmian's power devoured it. The power of the heavenly crystal turned into small wisps of spiritual energy and merged into Chu Fengmian's body. Gradually, Chu Fengmian felt a carefree feeling. The heaven crystal was enough to purify the energy in a cultivator's body. No matter how powerful a person's bloodline was, no matter how high the grade of the medicinal pill they swallowed was or how pure the spiritual energy was, they would still leave impurities in their bodies. Although these impurities looked insignificant, they would affect the cultivator's body. Even Chu Fengmian, who had such a powerful bloodline, felt a lot of black sludge appear on his skin under the power of the heavenly crystal. These were the impurities in the cultivator's body. Chu Fengmian had swallowed many medicinal pills. The impurities produced by these medicinal pills were now completely expelled with the power of the heavenly crystal. Chu Fengmian felt that his body had become much more refreshed. It seemed that every movement and the control of spiritual energy in his hands had become much smoother. Although the heavenly crystal was not enough to make a cultivator's realm progress, its effect was incomparable to any medicinal pill. Even the heavenly primordial spirit pill could not be compared to the heavenly crystal. The power of the heavenly crystal was enough to transform a cultivator's body. The power of the entire bloodline would become much purer. Although Chu Fengmian's power hadn't changed, Luo Yunyang could sense that he was much stronger than before. Because there were no impurities in his body, a perfect body would not be affected in any way. Every movement could be done perfectly. It could be said that Chu Fengmian's body was truly perfect. His body had been molded to the most perfect state. He had already reached the limit of what he could do now. What Chu Fengmian lacked now was to enter the Beimang Academy and then find an opportunity to step into the divine power realm. What's going on? How did your body undergo such an earth-shattering change? A voice suddenly sounded in Chu Fengmian's mind. This made Chu Fengmian a little stunned. Then, he remembered. Xing Xian, you've awakened? This voice was the voice of the demonic sword that had been hiding in Chu Fengmian's body, Xing Xian's voice. Xing Xian had been sleeping most of the time. Chu Fengmian had almost forgotten about his existence. He did not expect that Xing Xian would wake up now. That's right. What exactly did you swallow? How did your body transform to such a perfect state? Xing Xian observed Chu Fengmian's body and seemed to be slightly stunned. I obtained a piece of heavenly crystal. Chu Fengmian replied indifferently. Heavenly crystal? Hearing this name, Xing Xian was clearly stunned. It seemed that he did not remember this name. He scanned Chu Fengmian's body with his spiritual power. Chu Fengmian felt that everything hidden in his body seemed to be seen by Xing Xian. How powerful was Xing Xian when he was at his peak? Even life and death realm martial artists could not see through my body. Yet, I have no way to hide in front of him. Chu Fengmian said with some astonishment. He had deliberately concealed the power in his body just now, wanting to test it out. However, his concealment was meaningless in front of Xing Xian. This is the power of Star Crystal? Xing Xian examined the power left in Chu Fengmian's body and muttered to himself in astonishment. This is something that only appears in grade 4 starfields and above. How could it appear here? Star crystal? Grade 4 starfield? Hearing Xing Xian's words, Chu Fengmian was extremely shocked. This Xing Xian actually knew about heavenly crystal. Heavenly crystal was actually a name given by the 9 regions. Because it came from the sky outside the region, it was called heavenly. However, it seemed that Xing Xian actually knew about heavenly crystal. What was its origin? Thank you Chuanoa, Jianwang, little grandpa Wusua, for your tip. Xiao Yu will do his best to update when he has time. I've received everyone's urging. Chapter 448. Xing Xian's origin had always been mysterious. The only thing that Chu Fengmian knew about him was the battle dragon art. The battle dragon art was definitely not a martial technique that could be created in the 9 regions. At least in Chu Fengmian's knowledge, it was impossible for anyone in the 9 regions to create such a terrifying martial technique. It's nothing. It's an extremely precious item. It's your fortune to be able to obtain it. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Xing Xian casually changed the topic. I know that you have a lot of questions, but you have to at least cultivate the first level of the battle dragon art to the greater completion before I can tell you. After saying that, Xing Xian's voice disappeared. No matter how Chu Fengmian asked, he did not appear. I'm afraid that Xing Xian's origin is from the extraterritorial starry sky. Chu Fengmian raised his head and looked at the sky. Beyond the sky was the extraterritorial starry sky. No one knew how big the extraterritorial starry sky was. It wasn't impossible that Xing Xian came from the extraterritorial starry sky. Forget it. Without strength, it's useless even if I know. Chu Fengmian shook his head. Without strength, it was useless for him to ask more questions. When he had the strength, Xing Xian would naturally tell him. Chu Fengmian sat on the bed and continued to cultivate. He used the power of the sky crystal to perfect his body. 2 days passed in an instant. Young master, the Northern Mang Academy's assessment is about to begin. Outside the door, Tuoba Ding knocked and reminded. All right. Chu Fengmian opened his eyes and slowly got up. He opened the door and left. Hanueli had already rested. Now, the 3 of them were heading towards the Northern Mang Academy. The location of the assessment was not in the Northern Mang Academy, but in a huge palace called the Northern Mang Palace. The palace was much larger than many cities. It was capable of accommodating millions of people. Chu Fengmian glanced around. There were more than 100 warriors who came to participate in the Northern Mang Academy's assessment. It was a spectacular sight. There are so many people. Hanueli, who was standing at the side, was deeply shocked when he saw this scene. There were so many young talents from countless countries. All the geniuses in the northern region had come. This is normal. If there weren't so many people, the Northern Mang Academy wouldn't be so prosperous. Chu Fengmian said with a smile when he heard Hanueli's words. He wasn't surprised at all. In his previous life, Chu Fengmian had seen the opening ceremony of the 7 great sects, and it was much more terrifying than this. After all, the 7 great sects were huge behemoths. When they opened their sects and accepted disciples, it wasn't just people from one region that would go. All the geniuses of the 9 regions would go. Compared to this, the momentum was much greater. So many young talents that participated in the assessment were selected to enter the Northern Mang Academy after being screened. Every disciple that entered the Northern Mang Academy was carefully selected. At the very least, they were 1 in 100 and were all geniuses. Not a single one of them was an ordinary person. When Tuoba Ding saw this, he sighed inwardly. He had participated in the assessment before, so he knew how cruel it was. The number of people who could truly enter the Northern Mang Academy was probably less than 1 in 100. And these people were only the most ordinary outer disciples. If they wanted to have a real position and be promoted to a core disciple, it would be even less than 1 in 100. Perhaps only 1 out of 10,000 people would be able to become an inner disciple. It was definitely a cruel test. As for the rest of the people, they were all like stepping stones. It was a cruel way of raising venomous insects. The Northern Mang Academy's method was to raise venomous insects. They had countless disciples and let them kill each other. Only those who stood out would be valued. As for those who failed, they could only remain in obscurity. Although it was cruel, it was the case in the 9 regions, where martial arts were respected. I can't take part in the assessment, so I can only watch from the outside. Tuoba Ding said to Chu Fengmian from the side. He was a disciple of the Northern Mang Academy, so he couldn't take part in the assessment. He could only leave the palace. After all, the assessment was one of the most important matters of the Northern Mang Academy. No problems were allowed. A young man walked into the palace. The young man was very handsome and had an imposing aura. He was obviously a disciple of a big family. Many people around Chu Fengmian started to discuss when they saw him. Look, the young master of the Yan family from the eastern state, Yan Gu, is here too. What a powerful aura. Although he is only at the 7th level of the divine power realm, his aura is comparable to that of a peak saint. We are in the same batch as such a genius. How can we compete with him? Don't worry. With his aptitude, he will definitely be pulled into the inner sect by some elders. Don't worry. Oh? This person is quite powerful. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered as he looked at Yan Gu. He quietly used his spiritual sense to investigate Yan Gu. Yan Gu was at the 7th level of the divine power realm, but his aura was comparable to that of a peak saint. He was definitely a famous genius. However, Chu Fengmian noticed that Yan Gu was hiding his strength. It was less than 1/10 of Yan Gu's true strength. Yan Gu's true strength was probably close to a battle index of 10, close to that of the flower-snatching venerable. This kind of strength was extremely conspicuous and famous among this batch of newcomers. Apart from Yan Gu, Chu Fengmian also saw that there were many experts hiding their strength among the crowd. It should be said that most of the experts present were hiding their strength. After all the participants were opponents. Therefore, no one would take the initiative to reveal their strength. Noon, the palace was already filled with people. Peng! With a loud sound, the palace doors closed. A tall martial artist suddenly stood up. This martial artist was at the 5th level of the life and death realm. His battle index had reached 200. He was an existence that Chu Fengmian couldn't contend against. This is Elder Su Ling, who is in charge of this batch's exam. Chu Fengmian looked at the 5th level life and death realm expert. Through Tuoba Ding, he naturally knew who this person was. Tuoba Ding had already told Chu Fengmian everything about the exam. Therefore, Chu Fengmian knew a lot of things in advance. Letting a 5th level life and death realm expert be in charge of the exam. North Sea Academy is really generous. Chu Fengmian looked at Elder Su Ling and thought to himself. Chapter 449. Elder Su Ling in front of him was much more powerful than anyone Chu Fengmian had ever seen in his life. Although Chu Fengmian had seen experts like flower-seizing venerable and Su family's old ancestor who had already reached the life and death realm, Chu Fengmian was no match for Elder Su Ling. However, he was still far from being able to contend against Elder Su Ling. Most likely, Elder Su Ling could kill a life and death expert like the Su family's old ancestor with a wave of his hand. Life and death realm. Every level had a huge gap, and it wasn't easy to surmount. Northern Mang Academy didn't have the intention of letting Elder Su Ling preside over this year's exam without showing off their strength. Presiding over the exam wasn't an easy task. Almost every one of the million martial artists present was a genius with extremely high aptitudes, and were extremely arrogant. Among them, there were also some like Yan Gu, whose strength had already neared the life and death realm. If these examinees were to start a riot, it would be impossible to suppress them without sufficient strength. This Elder Su Ling had reached the 5th level of life and death realm, and his strength was astonishing. Only such a character could suppress these arrogant geniuses present. You should know the rules of Northern Mang Academy's exam. Hand over your Northern Mang medallion first, and someone will come to inspect it. Only those with the medallion can participate in the exam. Elder Suling coldly said. Following his words, several thousand venerables appeared one after another. These martial artists wore blue robes, and were all Northern Mang Academy's disciples. One by one, they began to earnestly inspect the medallion. You don't have a medallion, so you don't have the qualifications to participate in this year's exam. Scram! Suddenly, there was a commotion in front of them. A martial artist who didn't seem to have a Northern Sea token was directly thrown out by one of the Northern Sea Academy's disciples. There was no explanation for this. Northern Mang Academy had always been incomparably tyrannical. When it was Chu Fengmian's turn, Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli handed over the medallion they had prepared. The Northern Mang Academy's disciple gave it a glance, then returned it to Chu Fengmian. However, two numbers suddenly appeared on the medallion's back. Han Yueli's was 103, while Chu Fengmian's was 961. All examinees, according to the order, walk in one by one. 100 people in a group will participate in the examination. Elder Su Ling yelled from above. Suddenly, the Northern Mang medallion in the hands of some of the warriors below started to flicker. The number on it was 1. A total of 100 people walked out together towards the inner part of the palace. The first group, the second group, the third group. The numbers on it were the groups. The speed at which the cultivators left was very fast. When one group left, the other group was called out as well. Next group. Elder Su Ling spoke again. The token in Han Yueli's hand lit up. It's my turn. Han Yueli looked back at Chu Fengmian, then walked out and left. Although the Beimang Academy's assessment was extremely difficult, Chu Fengmian wasn't worried that Han Yueli would have any problems. After all, among this batch of newcomers, Chu Fengmian could only see a few that could contend against Han Yueli. In her group, it would be easy for her to pass the examination. The number of warriors in the palace gradually decreased as they left. Finally, the token in Chu Fengmian's hand lit up. Chu Fengmian walked out from the crowd and walked into the inner part of the palace with the others. In the inner part of the palace, under the guidance of someone, they arrived at an incomparably huge arena. Arena Battle Royale. The Beimang Academy's assessment was extremely simple. It was an arena battle royale. Whoever could defeat everyone within 100 people would be able to directly enter the Beimang Academy. In this place, everything was meaningless. The only thing that could be relied on was strength. There's only one rule. All of you stand on the arena. Only one winner can enter the Beimang Academy. The rest will be eliminated. You can choose to admit defeat. As long as you admit defeat, there will be a force that can take you away. However, if you don't admit defeat and fight to the death, you can't blame others for your death. A disciple of the Beimang Academy explained the rules at the side. In Chu Fengmian's group, there were many who came to participate in the Beimang Academy's assessment for the first time. When they heard the cruel rules, their faces were slightly nervous. However, their faces soon calmed down. Those who dared to participate in the Beimang Academy were all slightly famous geniuses. Although the rules were cruel, no one was afraid. A bunch of trash. This young master advises you to admit defeat obediently. Otherwise, you won't even have the chance to admit defeat on the arena. A martial honorable said coldly. His words were full of arrogance. This was a young man. His eyes swept across Chu Fengmian's group with disdain. He seemed to be an extremely arrogant person. Tu Xiong, it's actually him. We're finished. Some warriors seemed to have recognized the young man's identity and their faces turned pale. However, there were more people who didn't seem to know the young man's identity and asked one after another. Who is this person? He seems to be extremely powerful. This person is Tu Xiong. Although he's not a disciple of a big clan, it's said that he's obtained many fortuitous encounters and is extremely powerful. He participated in the previous assessment, but his luck wasn't good. He encountered a super expert whose strength was close to the life and death realm in his group. He fought for a long time before being defeated. His strength is enough to kill a peak saint. What? Someone who can contend with a life and death realm expert. Hearing that person's words, many people's faces turned pale. It was an absolute misfortune to be in the same group as such a ferocious person. Many people present were only at the first or second layer of the divine power realm. How could they contend with such a ferocious person? Tu Xiong coldly snorted when he heard the crowd's discussion. Humph, a bunch of trash. If you don't want to die, scram. Don't waste this young master's time. Some of the warriors who knew Tu Xiong's strength were extremely unwilling to accept this. However, they could only raise their hands and choose to admit defeat. On the arena, life and death were really up to fate. In an intense battle, it was hard to say whether one could admit defeat. If they couldn't, then they would die. I admit defeat. I admit defeat as well. About 8 people directly admitted defeat and left. They were all warriors who had participated in the previous assessment. They knew that they weren't Tu Xiong's match and directly left. Chapter 450. Most of these people who left were martial artists who had participated in the previous batch. Most of the people who stayed were participating for the first time. Although Tu Xiong was infamous, they still wanted to give it a try. After all, the assessment was a chaotic battle. 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. Perhaps they could take advantage of the chaos to get a chance. Tu Xiong looked around and saw that there were still many people who stayed. He said coldly, "Looks like all of you are courting death. Don't blame me for what happens next." His words were a direct threat, an undisguised threat. Many of the martial artists present were from large families. They were proud and arrogant. How could they bear such a threat? Humph, we don't know who will be the one who will die. Qingli, a venerate cultivator and one of the best cultivators present, from the Qing clan, snorted coldly. You are right. Qingli's strength was comparable to a peak saint. He was not afraid of Tu Xiong. Hearing Tu Xiong's threat, he retorted coldly. Hearing Qingli's words, Tu Xiong turned to look at Qingli. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Tu Xiong said ferociously, "I'll kill you when we get to the arena." "Come on then." Qingli retorted, not to be outdone. "Is everyone ready? If no one admits defeat, let's get into the arena." A disciple from Northern Mang Academy said loudly. He opened a gap in the arena and all the martial artists present rushed into it. There were countless restrictions on the arena to prevent the shockwaves from spreading out. At the same time, it prevented the martial artists from leaving. The person who set up the restriction was probably extremely powerful. Chu Fengmian observed for a while and knew that even he couldn't break the restriction easily. All of this showed how powerful Northern Mang Academy was. The arena was huge and could easily accommodate 100 people standing separately. Everyone had already chosen their positions. Many of the martial artists chose to stand at the edge of the arena or at the corner to prevent sneak attacks. After all, in a chaotic battle, everyone present was an enemy. Chu Fengmian also chose a corner and stood at his original spot. His face was extremely calm. Among all the people on the stage, only one could be the victor. The rest of the people were all stepping stones. It was possible that they would be trampled on or even die. Begin. The North Sea Academy's disciple cried out in alarm. All the martial artists in the arena suddenly released a burst of spiritual energy. Everyone unleashed their full power, but none of them took the initiative to attack. In such a chaotic battle, whoever acted rashly would most likely be surrounded and attacked. A bunch of trash. Tu Xiong stood on the stage and saw that no one was making a move. His eyes were filled with disdain as he looked at Qingli. His eyes were filled with killing intent. "Brat, I'll kill you first. Let those trash see." That's the fate of those who dare to oppose me. Tu Xiong's spiritual power burst out completely. This power wasn't weaker than that of an ordinary pinnacle saint. Tu Xiong's feet moved, and he immediately rushed in front of Qingli. Spiritual energy erupted from his body, and his entire body became incomparably huge. He was 3 to 4 times the height of an ordinary warrior. Die! His fist smashed out, and the entire arena shook slightly. In the face of Tu Xiong's punch, Qingli wasn't to be outdone. He suddenly drew his sword and slashed at Tu Xiong. This slash contained a bit of sword intent. The moment it was slashed out, the space hissed. These two people were the two most powerful people in the arena. Seeing Tu Xiong and Qingli exchange blows, countless people in the arena quietly watched. Everyone wanted to be the last person to benefit from the fight between the clam and the fisherman. Boom! A punch and a sword. The two powerful spiritual energies instantly clashed. There was no technique to speak of in this exchange. It was a real clash of strength. Brat, how dare you be so presumptuous in front of me with your little strength? As the two forces clashed, Tu Xiong's face was filled with a cold smile. In the next instant, he threw out a punch that directly shattered Qingli's sword. Not only did this punch break Qingli's sword, but it also forced him back a few steps. Qingli spat out a mouthful of blood. Impossible! My strength has clearly reached the level of a peak saint. How can I be defeated? Qingli looked at Tu Xiong in disbelief. Tu Xiong's strength seemed to be at the level of a peak saint. Qingli's strength was the same. But now, Qingli had been defeated so miserably. He didn't have the strength to fight back at all. Qingli's eyes were filled with fear. Tu Xiong's strength had far exceeded his expectations. He wasn't someone he could contend against. Qingli was somewhat regretful. If he had known Tu Xiong's strength was so great, he definitely wouldn't have provoked him. But now, it was too late for regrets. I admit defeat. Before Qingli could finish his words, Tu Xiong had already moved. Tu Xiong's body had already moved. His feet moved and he instantly appeared in front of Qingli. Suddenly, he threw a punch at Qingli's chest. Bang! Blood spurted out. Qingli's chest was directly smashed, and his internal organs were all shattered. Qingli didn't even have the time to admit defeat before he was killed by Tu Xiong. A slightly famous genius like him had died in Tu Xiong's hands. Cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots. How ruthless! Chu Fengmian thought to himself when he saw Tu Xiong's actions. When Tu Xiong attacked, he didn't give Qingli any chance to escape. He directly killed Qingli. Although one could choose to surrender in the arena, one could also be killed before he surrendered. Tu Xiong's method didn't give Qingli any chance to surrender, and he directly killed Qingli in an instant. Damn it! Go, kill him! If we don't kill him, none of us can win. A few figures suddenly moved. These few figures attacked Tu Xiong from all directions. Sabers, spears, swords, lances, and countless spiritual weapons appeared one after another and attacked Tu Xiong. Even Qingli couldn't withstand a single blow from Tu Xiong. Tu Xiong was already the biggest threat in the arena. The other warriors joined forces and attacked Tu Xiong at the same time. Countless martial skills blasted towards Tu Xiong. Every disciple who participated in the assessment wanted to win. Now, they were ready to besiege Tu Xiong and eliminate the biggest threat. Chapter 451. Tu Xiong's strength was far superior to the others. Therefore, many of the martial artists on the stage could not help but attack together. There were over 20 honorable martial artists attacking together. They surrounded Tu Xiong and attacked him. A bunch of trash. How dare you besiege me? You're courting death. Tu Xiong snorted and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. His body moved, and the muscles on his body bulged. He suddenly exerted force and punched out. The compressed spiritual energy in the punch turned into a thunderbolt. Instantly, the countless warriors who besieged him dissipated in the explosion of the thunderbolt. Countless warriors in the surroundings were sent flying by the shockwave. How can this person be so powerful? Countless warriors were blasted away. Everyone's eyes were filled with horror. There were so many of them attacking Tu Xiong at the same time, but they couldn't do anything to him. Die! Tu Xiong evaded the crowd and snorted coldly. Then, he rushed toward the strongest middle-aged man in the crowd. Boom! With a punch, the middle-aged man's chest was directly penetrated, just like Qing Li's. He was beaten to death. You pieces of trash can become my nutrients. I have the blood demonic body and I need the saint's blood essence to devour. Now, all of you must die. Tu Xiong laughed maniacally. The middle-aged man's blood essence had been completely devoured by him. His eyes swept across the arena again and his figure changed continuously. Bang! 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 Another 3 martialists died at Tu Xiong's hands. The blood essence of those martialists was completely devoured by Tu Xiong and turned into power within his body. Oh no, this person is not someone we can deal with. Run! Seeing Tu Xiong killing in all directions, the expressions of some of the surrounding warriors changed. Their eyes were filled with fear as they hurriedly retreated, wanting to admit defeat. You want to admit defeat now? It's too late. You will all become my nutrients. I will use your blood essence to build my body. Tu Xiong laughed heartily as he charged forward. In an instant, the warriors who had besieged him were all killed by him. Countless pure saint's blood essences were devoured by him. After devouring so much saint's blood essence, Tu Xiong's strength had increased a little. This made him look at the remaining warriors. All of you, die as well. Tu Xiong's eyes were filled with madness. Like a demon, he attacked and began to kill countless warriors in the arena. It was as if he wanted to kill everyone in the arena. Countless warriors in the arena either fled or hurriedly admitted defeat. Their eyes were filled with fear. After killing a few more warriors, Tu Xiong's eyes swept across the arena again. He saw Chu Fengmian, who was standing in his original spot with a calm face. He couldn't help but reveal a mocking smile on his face. Boy, it seems like you are scared. You don't even know how to escape? Come over here and kneel on the ground obediently. If you do, I can spare your life. Tu Xiong looked at Chu Fengmian. A wind-resisting realm martial artist, in his eyes, was simply the existence of an ant. Tu Xiong had no interest in killing anyone who had not entered the divine power realm. Looking at Chu Fengmian, who was standing in his original spot with a calm face, he could not help but reveal a playful look. Tu Xiong pointed at Chu Fengmian and scolded loudly. His words were full of threats. He did not put Chu Fengmian in his eyes. Boy, I am talking to you. Get over here quickly. Chu Fengmian looked at Tu Xiong and said with a smile. How about this? Kneel down and I will spare your life. How about that? What? Brat, are you crazy? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Tu Xiong was stunned at first. Then, he laughed. Spare my life? You, an ant in the wind-controlling realm? You are not even trash. You dare to participate in the Northern Sea Academy's assessment with such strength? You are really overestimating yourself. Tu Xiong's eyes changed. The smile disappeared and turned into killing intent. Since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish. Tu Xiong's body suddenly moved. His speed was so fast that it was shocking. In almost an instant, he was in front of Chu Fengmian. Spiritual energy gathered in his hand. Suddenly, he threw a punch at Chu Fengmian's head. You are overestimating yourself. Chu Fengmian calmly spat out these words. He waved his hand casually, and a gust of spiritual energy was thrown out. Tu Xiong's punch was completely dissolved. Not a trace of power was left. It hit Chu Fengmian's body without any power. Who is this person? There is actually someone who can resist Tu Xiong. A wind-resisting realm warrior. How is it possible? On the arena, other warriors looked at the scene in front of them. They could not believe their eyes. Tu Xiong, who was invincible and almost invincible, had his fist wind dissolve so easily. Moreover, the one who did all this was only a wind-resisting realm warrior. Even Qingli, whose strength was comparable to a peak saint, could not resist Tu Xiong's punch. Now, Chu Fengmian did it. How could people not be shocked? Oh, kid, you do have some skills. When Tu Xiong saw that his punch had been so easily neutralized, he could not help but reveal a look of surprise on his face. But soon, it turned into a sneer. So what if you have some skills? You will still die today. Blood demonic body. Tu Xiong's body swelled, and his aura was much stronger than before. What? This is Tu Xiong's full strength? What a terrifying aura. This aura is probably close to the life and death realm. Seeing Tu Xiong's soaring aura, the surrounding people shouted in disbelief. Kid, go to hell. Tu Xiong smiled malevolently and attacked again. He clenched his fist and threw a punch at Chu Fengmian. The power of this punch was probably several times stronger than the previous one. This was Tu Xiong's true strength. If it was a peak saint, that peak saint would have probably died from this punch. Break! In the face of such a terrifying punch, Chu Fengmian only spoke casually. Chu Fengmian spat out a word that contained some spiritual power. This terrifying punch was easily neutralized in front of Chu Fengmian. Tyrannical divine punch. Tu Xiong's attack became fiercer and fiercer. Suddenly, he mobilized all the spiritual power in his body and turned it into an extremely tyrannical punch. Thanks to Yang Shui of Hongfu Chemicals PVC Auxiliary for the tip. Chapter 452. The power of Tu Xiong's punch shot through the air. Boundless spiritual energy immediately turned into an absolute overbearing aura. A powerful pressure enveloped Chu Fengmian and pressed down on him. Chu Fengmian stood in place and slowly raised his hand, pointing at the sky with his finger. With the point of his finger, the pressure was completely shattered. No matter how ferocious Tu Xiong's attack was, Chu Fengmian stood still and was not affected at all. What kind of cultivation technique is this person practicing? How can it be so strange? How can it dissolve my spiritual energy so easily? Tu Xiong frowned. His 2 consecutive punches were easily dissolved by Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian was only in the wind-controlling realm, so in his opinion, Chu Fengmian could dissolve his attack mostly because of his cultivation technique. Thinking of this, Tu Xiong suddenly withdrew his spiritual energy and integrated it into his muscles to increase his strength. So what if your cultivation technique is special? Since you can dissolve my spiritual energy, let's see if you can withstand my strength. Tu Xiong moved his feet and suddenly rushed toward Chu Fengmian. This time, Tu Xiong gave up on spiritual energy and planned to use his physical strength to deal with Chu Fengmian. With Tu Xiong's strength, even his physical strength was enough to contend with many saints. Moreover, he had just devoured countless saints' blood essence and cultivated the blood demonic body, which doubled his strength. In an instant, Tu Xiong rushed to Chu Fengmian and gave up all his spiritual energy to transform it into an extremely powerful physical strength. He rushed toward Chu Fengmian and punched directly. Good. Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed and he sneered. He also wanted to test his physical strength and see what level it had reached. Chu Fengmian cultivated the battle dragon skill, so his physical body was much tougher than other warriors. Moreover, he had refined his body with thunder and condensed it with the sky crystal recently. Chu Fengmian wanted to test his physical strength, but he saw Tu Xiong give up his spiritual energy and fight with his physical strength. Chu Fengmian also withdrew all of his spiritual energy and punched out with his physical body. Crazy, this person is completely crazy. Using his physical strength to contend with Tu Xiong? This person is courting death. Many people saw this scene and couldn't help but shake their heads. A divine power realm martial artist, even with the fleshy body, could easily crush a wind-resisting realm martial artist too. A physical confrontation was a real confrontation of strength. There was no technique to speak of. With such a difference in cultivation level, the difference in strength could be seen at a glance. Boom! While the crowd was discussing, Tu Xiong's fists and Chu Fengmian's fists. Crack! The sound of bones breaking suddenly rang out. How is this possible? Everyone's eyes and their mouths their eyes were filled with disbelief. The sound of bones breaking was not Chu Fengmian's, but Tu Xiong's. Tu Xiong's right arm was bent at an extremely strange angle. It was fractured by the force of the punch. What terrifying power! Is this guy's his? His. Was was a. His fem. His power was actually being completely suppressed. Chu Fengmian was a wind-controlling realm ant. How could he suppress Tu Xiong? Damn it! I don't believe this guy is invincible. Blood demonic body. Recover! Tu Xiong bellowed in anger. A bloody aura swirled around his body and instantly healed his broken right arm. This time, Tu Xiong's aura was even stronger than before. He was truly enraged and was attacking with all his might. Tu Xiong clenched his fists and punched at Chu Fengmian as he spoke. Let's see how many times you can recover. Break it for me. Chu Fengmian strode forward. He opened his 5 fingers and clawed at Tu Xiong. Crack! Once again, Tu Xiong's arms were broken by Chu Fengmian's grip. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's body had already rushed in front of Tu Xiong. He kicked Tu Xiong's chest. Boom! Tu Xiong's body was sent flying several hundred meters away. He only stopped when he hit the wall of the arena. Damn it! How can a wind-controlling realm brat have such terrifying strength? Tu Xiong stood up once again. The disdain in his eyes had disappeared without a trace. He could see that Chu Fengmian was not as simple as he looked. He was definitely a strong opponent. I plan to show my full strength after entering the Northern Sea Academy. Brat, you're enough to make me use my full strength. Tu Xiong looked at Chu Fengmian. His eyes were full of killing intent. I'll let you know how powerful my full strength is. As he spoke, Tu Xiong's body moved again. This time, his speed was several times faster than before. The power in Tu Xiong's body seemed to have broken a seal and was completely unleashed. Tu Xiong had been hiding most of his strength in order to suppress the life and death tribulation. Now that he met Chu Fengmian, he finally broke out. What? That wasn't Tu Xiong's full strength. I'm afraid that such a person is already the top figure in the Northern Sea Academy. How can we participate in the assessment with him? Seeing Tu Xiong's strength increase, countless people's eyes were filled with despair. Participating in the assessment with such a person was definitely the misfortune of misfortune. Only Chu Fengmian's expression was as calm as before. Full strength? So what if you use your full strength? Die for me. Chu Fengmian snorted. With Tu Xiong's strength, Chu Fengmian could kill him at any time unless he was several times stronger. Chu Fengmian did not want to kill him directly because he did not want to be too dazzling. Otherwise, Chu Fengmian would have been able to defeat everyone on the arena in a single breath. Die for me. Chu Fengmian waved his hand and gathered the force of the battle dragon. Even though it had yet to take the form of a claw of the battle dragon, it still had yet to take the form of a claw. Although it had not yet formed the battle dragon claw, it was still an extremely terrifying force. Boom! 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 Tu Xiong, who had been swaggering around arrogantly a moment ago, was now pinned to the ground by this palm strike, unable to move at all. Thank you for Liu Yu's reward. Chapter 453. All of this had been completely reversed in an instant. Tu Xiong, who was invincible just a moment ago, was now suppressed by Chu Fengmian. Tu Xiong did not even have the ability to resist as he was suppressed by Chu Fengmian. When the martialists in the arena saw this scene, they were completely speechless. They did not know what to say. Who would have thought that Tu Xiong would be defeated by Chu Fengmian? Tu Xiong was easily suppressed by Chu Fengmian without the ability to fight back. Tu Xiong was someone who could even kill a saint at the pinnacle. He was definitely going to be promoted to an inner disciple. Even Tu Xiong was in a daze. He could not believe it. He was actually defeated by Chu Fengmian like this. Don't kill me. I'm willing to admit defeat. Tu Xiong knelt in front of Chu Fengmian and begged for mercy. This scene simply stimulated the eyes of countless people present. No one would have thought that someone like Tu Xiong would be forced to kneel and beg for mercy. Hearing Tu Xiong's words, Chu Fengmian looked at him. His eyes flickered as if he was thinking about something. After a while, Chu Fengmian spoke. All right. Chu Fengmian was not a bloodthirsty person. He did not have much enmity with Tu Xiong. If Tu Xiong was willing to surrender, it was not impossible for Chu Fengmian to spare his life. The spiritual energy in Chu Fengmian's palm slowly dissipated. The spiritual energy that had been suppressing Tu Xiong was also slowly dissipating. Blood piercing the rainbow. Almost at the moment when the spiritual energy in Chu Fengmian's palm dissipated, Tu Xiong's face suddenly revealed a sinister smile. A stream of blood from his palm turned into a long spear. At such a close distance, it suddenly pierced toward Chu Fengmian's chest. Ha ha, boy, I didn't expect you to be so naive. Did you think that I would surrender? What a joke. You have strength, but you're just a fool. Tu Xiong suddenly stood up and laughed. His laughter was full of mockery. What's going on? It's over. This boy is dead. This sudden turn of events caught everyone off guard. No one had thought that Chu Fengmian would actually let go of Tu Xiong. This gave Tu Xiong the opportunity to launch a sneak attack. At such a close distance, even a life-and-death expert might not be able to block Tu Xiong's sneak attack. It's over. This brat is really stupid. He actually let go of Tu Xiong. Sigh, looks like Tu Xiong is going to win this time. Some of the martialists could not help but feel that it was a pity. Right now, Chu Fengmian was like a dark horse that had just emerged. But now, he had been tricked by Tu Xiong and had fallen directly. However, this could not be blamed on Tu Xiong. Between martial artists, there was always mutual deception. Furthermore, in this arena, they were all enemies. Even if he used underhanded means, there was nothing to blame. Tu Xiong sneered when he saw the spear about to pierce through Chu Fengmian's chest. Brat, after you die, remember to be a smart person in your next life. Really? Who said I would die? The sudden voice made Tu Xiong's face stiffen. The sneer on his face also seemed to have stopped. How is this possible? You're not dead? Tu Xiong stuttered. He couldn't even speak properly. In his expectation, Chu Fengmian would definitely be pierced through by the spear and fall. At such a close distance, even a life-and-death expert would not be able to block it. He suddenly turned his head and saw that the spear was caught in Chu Fengmian's hand. Chu Fengmian exerted strength in his palm, and the spear was directly shattered. You. How is this possible? Even a life-and-death expert would not be able to block this blood rainbow, not to mention at such a close distance. How could you block it? Tu Xiong suddenly said. He was extremely shocked and could not believe it. Chu Fengmian's face was calm. He did not answer Tu Xiong's question, but his eyes were filled with killing intent. Die. Now that you dare to sneak attack me, I have a reason to kill you. Chu Fengmian waved his hand and directly slapped at Tu Xiong. I admit defeat, Tu Xiong hurriedly shouted. He wanted to surrender and leave the stage. However, how could Chu Fengmian give Tu Xiong such a chance? Chu Fengmian had already given Tu Xiong a chance. Since he chose to sneak attack Chu Fengmian, his death was destined. Die. Peng. With a palm of spiritual power, Tu Xiong's body directly exploded, turning into a cloud of blood mist and was directly collected by Chu Fengmian. A martial artist who had the strength to become an inner disciple died in the entrance exam. If this news spread out, it was enough to make people sigh. We admit defeat. The remaining martial artists looked at Chu Fengmian killing Tu Xiong as if they were looking at a monster. They could not even deal with Tu Xiong, let alone Chu Fengmian, who killed Tu Xiong. They all surrendered. On the stage, only Chu Fengmian was left. The northern main token in Chu Fengmian's hand emitted a ray of light. This was the sign of passing the exam. "Oh? You actually passed." Chu Fengmian walked down the stage. The Northern Mang Academy's disciple looked at Chu Fengmian with astonishment in his eyes. He did not know what happened on the stage, so he was extremely surprised to see Chu Fengmian walking down. In this group, Chu Fengmian's realm could only be considered below average. For martial artists who had not even reached the divine power realm, unless they were extremely lucky, it was very rare for them to pass the exam. "I'm just lucky to have picked up a big bargain," Chu Fengmian calmly said. Chu Fengmian was too lazy to explain. After all, his current goal was to pass the exam first. Once Chu Fengmian entered Biming Academy and thoroughly understood its internal situation, he would be able to truly be unrestrained and stand out. Ah, what luck! Luck is also a part of one's strength. With such luck, who knows if you will encounter danger and turn it into safety. The Northern Mang Academy's disciple looked at Chu Fengmian and said with a smile, "Let's go." The disciples who passed the exam are waiting in front. "All right." Chu Fengmian nodded and followed the Northern Mang Academy's disciple into the palace. There was a small space inside, and there were rows and rows of chairs. With a glance, Chu Fengmian saw Han Yueli sitting at the side. Han Yueli sat at the side. Although her expression was calm, it made people feel a chill when they looked at her. She was like an ice goddess. Many martial artists in the surroundings only dared to secretly peek and did not dare to go up and talk. Chapter 454. After drawing out the profound cold energy in his body, Han Yueli's aura became even more noble. Everyone who saw him could not help but be mesmerized. Chu Fengmian swept his gaze across the crowd and saw that many people were looking at Han Yueli with adoration. If anyone dared to approach Han Yueli at this time, they would probably become the target of public criticism. However, Chu Fengmian did not care and directly walked towards Han Yueli. This test was indeed not difficult for Han Yueli and he easily passed it. Seeing Chu Fengmian walk over, Han Yueli's face finally revealed a slight smile. "You took quite a long time." Seeing Chu Fengmian walk over, Han Yueli's frosty face finally revealed a slight smile. Today, Han Yueli would only reveal such an attitude in front of Chu Fengmian. It took some time. Chu Fengmian smiled and sat beside Han Yueli. He naturally knew that this test was naturally not difficult for Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli. If the two of them wanted to, they could instantly kill everyone on the stage. They delayed for some time so that they would not be so dazzling. The conversation between the two of them attracted the attention of many people in the palace. Especially many people who saw Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli talking so happily. They looked at Chu Fengmian with eyes that could not wait to kill Chu Fengmian. "Brother Yan, it seems that it will not be easy for you to pursue this girl. This girl's appearance clearly shows that her heart already belongs to someone." On the other side of the palace, a few cultivators were sitting together. They were led by the young master of the Yan family, Yan Gu, whom Chu Fengmian had met in the main hall. They had already vaguely formed a small faction. Many cultivators attached themselves to Yan Gu and tried their best to curry favor with him. In the Northern Mang Academy, there were also countless small factions. Everyone was a new disciple and would gather together to enjoy the shade of a large tree. Among this batch of newcomers, the most dazzling one was Yan Gu. Naturally, many people regarded him as their leader. However, among this group of people, there was a young man sitting next to Yan Gu. He seemed to be someone who was on the same level as Yan Gu. He was not trying to curry favor with Yan Gu. "Brother Mai, you don't have to worry. None of the women that I, Yan Gu, have taken a fancy to can escape from my grasp." Yan Gu glanced at Han Yueli, his eyes filled with adoration. He made up his mind to obtain Han Yueli. With Brother Yan's help, I naturally believe that only Brother Yan is worthy of such a woman. the young man beside him said with a smile. However, that woman's strength is not weak. It won't be that easy to obtain her. His position was on the same level as Yan Gu. He was also a prominent figure among this batch of newcomers. Mai Zhan came from one of the great clans of the North region, the Mai clan. His strength was only below Yan Gu's, and he was already close to the life and death realm. Humph, so what? Hearing Mai Zhan's words, Yan Gu coldly snorted. Wait until I enter the Northern Mang Academy and obtain its resources. I will soar to the heavens and become an invincible figure. At that time, I don't believe that any woman will be able to reject my pursuit. Only I am worthy of such a woman. Yan Gu looked at Han Yueli with adoration. From the first time he saw her, he had already made up his mind to obtain Han Yueli. Yan Gu glanced at Han Yueli and then at Chu Fengmian. His eyes were filled with disdain. Moreover, the person beside her is just a trash of the wind resistance realm. Although he was lucky enough to enter the Northern Mang Academy, he's still just an outer disciple. Wait until he enters the Northern Mang Academy. Their status will change drastically. I don't even need to do anything. This relationship will naturally be broken. Yes, any woman who can be valued by Brother Yan is her fortune. Yes, with Brother Yan's future achievements, you can find any woman you want. Don't think that she's an ice goddess now. As long as Brother Yan hooks his finger, she will be delivered to him. The group of martial artists sitting beside Yan Gu chimed in one after another. Yan Gu couldn't help but reveal a proud expression. Although the group of people were whispering, it was impossible to hide from Chu Fengmian's ears. Hearing the discussion, Chu Fengmian couldn't help but reveal a cold smile. Since Yan Gu dared to have designs on Chu Fengmian's woman, Chu Fengmian had already put him on the death list. When Chu Fengmian found an opportunity in the Northern Mang Academy, he would definitely kill him. The palace was soon filled with people. At a glance, there were more than 10,000 people. Although there were a lot of people, compared to the 1 million people in the main hall, only 1% of them were able to pass the test. The rest of the people either died or failed. After waiting for 4 to 6 hours, the test was over. Everyone was present. Those who remained weren't weak. At the very least, they had the strength of level 5 divine power realm and above. A wind-resisting realm martial artist like Chu Fengmian was like a crane in a flock of chickens in the palace. He was extremely eye-catching. Many people looked at Chu Fengmian with disdain. After all, a wind-resisting realm martial artist like him must have been extremely lucky to pass the test. He might even have gotten in through the back door through connections. Naturally, they were extremely disdainful of him. Everyone has passed the test. You are all the outer disciples of the Northern Mang Academy. Suddenly, a group of martial artists walked in from the outside. These people were the disciples of the Northern Mang Academy. The leader of the group was the host of the test, Elder Su Ling. Everyone present hurriedly stood up. Even though the people who passed the test were all extremely prideful geniuses, none of them dared to be disrespectful in front of Elder Su Ling. These are your clothes, identity cards, and a book of the Northern Mang Academy. It records the rules of our Northern Mang Academy. When you return, you must familiarize yourself with it so that you don't violate the rules of the Northern Mang Academy. Elder Su Ling said coldly. The surrounding disciples of the Northern Mang Academy began to distribute the clothes and identity cards. Chu Fengmian took the clothes and refined it with a drop of blood. The clothes automatically wore on Chu Fengmian's body. The clothes were also a top-grade profound-grade spiritual artifact. Although the grade wasn't high, it could still withstand some minor injuries. Not to mention that the Northern Mang Academy would distribute tens of thousands of them at the same time. It would also consume a huge amount of wealth. Only the Northern Mang Academy had such wealth and was so overbearing. Today's 5th update, there's one more. Please reward me. Chapter 455. In addition to the Biming Academy's uniform, there were 2 other items, an identity token and the Biming ceremony. The Biming Academy's identity token was very similar to the Wuxing Academy's. First, it could prove one's identity. Second, it could record merit points. The Biming Academy also had merit points. As long as one completed the missions, one could exchange them for precious treasures. Many of the treasures in the Biming Academy could not be obtained outside. As long as one had enough merit points, they could be exchanged for. Chu Fengmian's first drop of blood appeared on the identity token. Chu Fengmian's name and a 0 appeared. This 0 represented Chu Fengmian's current merit points. Warriors like Chu Fengmian who had just arrived at the Biming Academy did not have any merit points. If they wanted to obtain merit points to exchange for treasures, they had to accept missions and work for the Biming Academy. As for the Biming ceremony, it was a book. Chu Fengmian opened it and saw countless records of the Biming Academy's history, rules, and the current distribution of forces in the northern region. Chu Fengmian did not pay much attention to the history and rules of the Biming Academy. He just skimmed through it and remembered most of it. What he cared about the most was the records of the northern region's forces and the current distribution of forces in the 9 regions. Although it was written very generally, it was still a treasure to Chu Fengmian. He had been reborn for 10,000 years. Chu Fengmian did not know anything about the changes that had happened in the past 10,000 years. Behemoths like the Biming Academy had risen in the past 10,000 years. 10,000 years was enough for the forces in the 9 regions to be reshuffled. Looking at the records of the Biming ceremony, Chu Fengmian found many unfamiliar names. Of course, Chu Fengmian was very familiar with many of the names. Tianjian Sect, Desolate Ancient Sect, Sage Monarch Sect, Dubhe Hall, 9 Demon City, Ancient Moon Valley, Medicine King Valley. The names of the 7 major sects were also listed. They were still the top forces in the 9 regions. Just you wait. Soon, I will completely remove the 7 major sects from the 9 regions. Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with killing intent. This killing intent was different from the past. It was the extreme hatred in Chu Fengmian's heart. What happened? Han Yueli also noticed the change in Chu Fengmian. She had never encountered such a frightening killing intent. Chu Fengmian, who had always been extremely indifferent, actually had such a frightening killing intent. She hurriedly patted Chu Fengmian awake, and only then did Chu Fengmian withdraw his killing intent. Chu Feng woke up and broke out in a cold sweat. He almost forgot that he was in the North Sea Academy. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, if Chu Fengmian behaved too strangely, it was very likely that he would be arrested for interrogation. It's nothing. I just thought of something from the past. Chu Fengmian glanced at Han Yueli gratefully. If Han Yueli hadn't reminded Chu Fengmian would have been blinded by hatred. As Chu Fengmian's strength increased, the hatred in his heart did not disappear. Instead, it became more and more intense. Normally, Chu Fengmian wasn't affected by it, but when he saw the name of the 7 great sects, the killing intent in his heart surged. No, my current strength is still very weak compared to the 7 great sects, I can only endure. When my strength is enough to contend against the 7 great sects, the 7 great sects will be removed from the 9 regions. Chu Fengmian secretly thought in his heart and adjusted his emotions. All right, everyone. You have all passed the test and are now disciples of our North Sea Academy. Once you enter our North Sea Academy, you can't leave for the rest of your life. You must be proud of our academy. Whoever dares to leave will die. Elder Su Ling said in a cold voice. The moment he spoke, an extremely frightening killing intent was contained in his words. Those who heard it couldn't help but shudder. The atmosphere in the palace instantly froze to the freezing point. Elder Su Ling said with a smile. However, since you have all become disciples of our North Sea Academy, we will naturally nurture you well. Don't worry, as long as you don't betray the academy will not restrict your freedom. These words broke the ice-cold stalemate. Chu Fengmian naturally understood that this was a form of intimidation. He was already used to it and looked at it indifferently. Now, everyone listen to my orders. Leave the palace. Outside, the ark has already been prepared. Everyone will be sent to the real location of our North Sea Academy. After Elder Su Ling said that, he turned around and left. Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli followed the crowd outside and saw a total of 10 enormous arcs. These arcs were countless times bigger than the ones of the Wuxing Academy. Among them, there were countless restrictions and arrays engraved on the arcs, which were much more mysterious. Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli stepped onto one of the arcs. This arc directly broke through the space and entered the space tunnel. Soon, a mountain range appeared in front of them. In this mountain range, there were many tall buildings and palaces. It was the size of countless countries. Everything in this mountain range belonged to the North Sea Academy. This Northern Mang Academy is actually in an independent space. Chu Fengmian looked at the scene in front of him and was slightly surprised. Right now, the location of the Beimang Academy was actually not in the Beimang city, but in another space. To be able to open up such a large space and use it as the location of the North Sea Academy, the founder of the North Sea Academy was much more powerful than Chu Fengmian had imagined. To be able to do this, only the peak experts of the 9 regions could do it. Not only Chu Fengmian, but many people on the Ark were even more shocked. They had never thought that there would be someone who could open up such a huge space in the void and establish a sect. Elder Su Ling looked at everyone's envious and shocked expressions and said with pride on his face, "The encampment of our Beimang Academy is in this void. It was created by our founding ancestor with a supreme ability. You guys can cultivate in it and it's incomparably safe. You don't have to worry about any external threats." Cultivating in the North Sea Academy was indeed incomparably safe. After all, it was an independent space. Chu Fengmian felt that even life and death experts couldn't barge into this space. Today's 6th update. Another update. Requesting everyone's support. Chapter 456. In the space where the Northern Mang Academy was located, the spiritual energy was extremely dense. Chu Fengmian stretched out his hand and slightly activated his spiritual energy. With a grab, a pure and colorless elixir appeared in his hand. The effect of this elixir was not inferior to a 9-cauldron elixir. This was just the elixir that Chu Fengmian condensed by casually grabbing the surrounding spiritual energy. He could condense it into an elixir by just grabbing a handful of spiritual energy. It could be seen how dense the spiritual energy in this space was. There should be a spiritual spring in this space. Otherwise, it's impossible to have such dense spiritual energy. This level of spiritual chi could not have been formed naturally. After all, this space was actually created by a Supreme Almighty. This spiritual energy was formed after birth. Chu Fengmian's eyes moved. He released his spiritual consciousness and directly searched this space. In the center of countless mountains, there were countless flowing lights that were shining. These flowing lights were formed by the spiritual energy that was extremely dense. The dense spiritual energy in this space was emitted from this place. The spiritual spring here is really huge. It's hard to find in the 9 regions. It was extracted from the 9 regions and moved into this space by someone with a supreme ability. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but exclaim. The great work of the founder of the Northern Mang Academy. He directly opened up an independent space and formed such a cultivation holy land. This kind of method was really shocking. It was no wonder that the Northern Mang Academy could rise crazily from 10,000 years. Just this method alone was extremely shocking. If I can enter this spiritual spring and wantonly devour spiritual energy, I'm afraid I'll reach the heavens in a single step and directly enter the divine power realm, or even the peak of the divine power realm. Chu Fengmian thought inwardly, but he also shook his head. This spiritual spring was obviously guarded by countless experts of the Northern Mang Academy. Just the countless restrictions and arrays that were placed on it were extremely difficult to deal with. The difficulty for Chu Fengmian to sneak in was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Not to mention that he might be discovered and directly put in danger. However, this spiritual spring belonged to the Beimang Academy. Now that Chu Fengmian had joined the Beimang Academy, it wasn't impossible to use it. From Tuoba Ding, Chu Fengmian knew that there were countless caves near the spirit spring of the Northern Sea Academy. These caves absorbed the spirit chi of the spirit spring and could be used for cultivation. Although it wasn't as good as directly entering the spirit spring, it was enough for Chu Fengmian. It could help Chu Fengmian break through and step into the divine force realm. However, even if he wanted to use the cave to cultivate, it would not be that simple. He would have to use merit points to exchange for it. In the Northern Mang Academy, although there were countless cultivation resources, they had to be exchanged with merit points. Like Chu Fengmian, who had just entered the Northern Mang Academy, he could only accumulate merit points and use them to exchange for various things. We're here. While Chu Fengmian was deep in thought, the speed of the arc gradually slowed down. Finally, it came to a stop in an incomparably huge plaza within the Northern Mang Academy. Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli, along with the others, walked down from the arc and came to the plaza. Elder Su Ling stood on a tall platform in the plaza. He swept his gaze across the crowd and suddenly opened his mouth. Now that all of you have passed the assessment, you should be the outer disciples of our Northern Sea Academy. However, right now, there's an opportunity to reach the heavens in a single bound before all of you. Elder Su Ling swept his gaze across the crowd and coldly opened his mouth. In a moment, some elders of our Northern Sea Academy will come to select disciples. If any of you are chosen by that elder as a disciple, you will reach the heavens in a single bound and directly become an inner disciple. There's no need for you to advance bit by bit. All of you must display all of your strength to be chosen by the elders. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for all of you. Do you understand? Yes. Below, countless people shouted in unison. Many people began to circulate their spiritual energy. The entire plaza was filled with spiritual energy that soared to the heavens. This was also one of the fixed events of the Northern Sea Academy's annual assessment. Some elders would come to select disciples. Many disciples with extremely high aptitudes were immediately selected. They didn't need to be outer disciples and could step into the inner disciples with a bright future. The majority of the warriors directly circulated the strongest energy in their bodies in order to be chosen by that elder as a disciple. Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli also circulated a portion of their spiritual energy and erupted it. They circulated less than 20% of their spiritual energy. Han Yueli displayed a strength close to the life and death realm. Right now, she was extremely dazzling in the crowd. As for Chu Fengmian, he only displayed a strength around the 5th layer of the divine power realm. With his realm, the strength he displayed was already extremely shocking. After all, his strength had surpassed the 6th layer of the divine power realm. If Chu Fengmian also displayed a strength close to the life and death realm, he wouldn't be accepted as a disciple by that elder. Instead, he would be captured by the experts of the Northern Sea Academy as a spy. Chu Fengmian had many fortuitous encounters. He didn't want to take this risk. In the sky above the plaza, there were several figures conversing with each other. The strength of these people wasn't below that of Elder Su Ling. They were the elders of the Northern Sea Academy, real big shots. If placed outside, they were super experts who could casually destroy a country. Their spiritual awareness swept through the crowd below. Chu Fengmian was somewhat nervous. He tried his best to conceal his various fortuitous encounters so as to avoid being discovered. Even if a peak life and death realm expert saw Chu Fengmian's fortuitous encounters, they would want to snatch them. Chu Fengmian didn't want to invite trouble for himself. An ordinary man's wealth was his own ruin. With the status of the elders of the Northern Sea Academy, they wouldn't do something like snatching a disciple's fortuitous encounters. However, their status, face, and dignity were nothing in front of a great fortune. If all of Chu Fengmian's fortuitous encounters were revealed, Chu Fengmian believed that these elders would kill Chu Fengmian at all costs and snatch his fortuitous encounters. There are a few pretty good fellows in this batch of newcomers. This Yan Gu and Mu Yezhan are indeed famous geniuses in the northern region. Their current strength has already reached the level of inner disciples. An elder of the Northern Mang Academy swept his gaze down from the sky as he slowly opened his mouth and spoke. Thank you very much for Liu Yu's reward. Chapter 457. In the air, countless elders of the North Mang Academy scanned the crowd below with their spiritual power, preparing to find a few geniuses with high aptitudes to be nurtured as disciples. For life and death experts like them, the matter of accepting a disciple was extremely important. If the disciple they taught wasn't strong enough, the master's reputation would be ruined. Naturally, no one would rashly choose to accept a disciple. So what if he's a little famous genius? The geniuses outside are only the tallest among the shortest. In the academy, he won't even be ranked. Another elder said. His tone was full of disdain. Their families are pretty good. They've been nurtured since young. If they see some talented geniuses, they'll quickly surpass them with some nurturing. That's natural. Our North Mang Academy's resources are countless times more abundant than the outside. Another elder chimed in. Nowadays, they weren't just selecting disciples based on strength. After all, many of the disciples participating in the North Mang Academy's exam came from different backgrounds. If one relied on his family's strength while the other relied on his own cultivation, the other would have a higher cultivation base. Naturally, the second person's aptitude was more outstanding. Of course, strength was also an extremely important factor. An elder looked at Chu Fengmian's direction, his eyes shining brightly. This kid is somewhat interesting. To be able to pass the exam with wind-controlling realm cultivation base. To be able to cross 6 realms, this kind of aptitude is pretty good. Oh? But it's a pity that this kid's strength is still too weak. This kind of cultivation base is still too low. An elder also noticed Chu Fengmian's presence. He swept his gaze over him and shook his head. If he's already in Divine Force realm, we can nurture him more. But when controlling realm, such a person might not even be able to break through Divine Force realm. Chu Fengmian was naturally aware of the two elders' gazes. Seeing that the two didn't find anything unusual, Chu Fengmian finally let out a sigh of relief. The strength of these elders far surpassed him. He was still far from being able to contend against these high-level life and death experts. Chu Fengmian didn't want others to discover the abnormality in his body. Therefore, he concealed most of his strength. Hold on, who is this person? An elder's eyes suddenly widened as he looked at Han Yueli, who was sitting beside Chu Fengmian on the platform. What a terrifying chill. My spiritual sense can't move freely around her. This kind of chill is simply terrifying. Really? There's actually such a person among this batch of rookies? The other elders also probed with their spiritual senses. When they sensed the abnormality, they were shocked to the extreme. They were all high-level life and death experts, but they couldn't see through Han Yueli's concealment. The coldness around Han Yueli was enough to block their spiritual senses. What a chill! To think that he's able to affect our spiritual senses at the Divine Force realm. Could it be that this person has an innate divine physique? An elder blurted out. Only the power of the innate divine body could surpass realms and render them helpless and unable to see through it. Innate divine body. This sentence was like a clap of thunder that resounded among the countless elders. Spiritual senses looked at Han Yueli one after another. However, the moment they reached Han Yueli's side, they were all frozen and shattered. All they could see was an extremely cold iceberg. Such an innate divine physique. I must take her as my disciple. That's right. Yi Tianjun is now the king of the North Sea Academy. His master's status has also risen. Now, there's another innate divine physique. I must take her as my disciple. The elders all had the intention of taking him in as a disciple. With a little training, the innate divine physique would become a super expert whose name would shake the entire North region. I want this girl. A soft shout suddenly sounded. It was an extremely clear female voice. Suddenly, an icy blue figure fell from the void. This icy blue figure was an extremely beautiful girl. Her face was as cold as frost, which made people feel a chill when they saw her. "So, it's Elder Bingley." Seeing the woman appear, Elder Su Ling's face was filled with respect. This girl's strength far surpassed Elder Su Ling's. Chu Fengmian couldn't see through her strength. However, she was at least close to the 8th or 9th level of life and death realm. She might even be at the peak of life and death realm. Among the countless elders of the North Sea Academy, she was an important figure with an extremely high status. Those elders who wanted to compete for Hanueli all retreated when they saw Elder Bingley. They didn't dare to compete. Profound cold physique. Your physique is very similar to mine. Come with me. Elder Bingley glanced at Hanueli, then waved her hand and brought Hanueli away. Yes. Hanueli respectfully replied and left with Elder Bingley. Hanueli was also clear that this was a chance for him to reach the heavens in a single bound. Thus, he left with Elder Bingley. Chu Fengmian nodded his head in relief as he had such a huge backer when he first entered the North Sea Academy. Hanueli's departure stimulated the countless warriors present. The countless warriors present pushed their strength to the limit, no longer hiding anything. They all wanted to be like Hanueli and be taken away by an elder. That way, they would be able to reach the heavens. "You, come with me." Another elder came down and pointed at Yengu. He then took Yengu away. The remaining one, Muyezhan, was also taken away by an elder. Among this batch of newcomers, the stronger ones were all taken away. This was within Chu Fengmian's expectations. In the end, the elders left one after another. Some elders who didn't get a disciple weren't discouraged. After all, it was better to go without than to have something substandard. Chu Fengmian had most of his talents and wasn't taken away by others. It wasn't a good thing for Chu Fengmian to suddenly become a disciple. He had too many secrets. If he became a disciple, he might be discovered. Now that he was alone, it was much more convenient. Moreover, Chu Fengmian didn't need a teacher. He had countless experiences from his previous life. He didn't need any cultivation technique or sword technique. He knew it all by himself. Chu Fengmian lacked strength now. He didn't lack any cultivation technique or sword technique. As long as he was strong enough, he could use anything. Thank you for your support. Thank you, Guys Chi, and Burning Dream for your tips. Chapter 458. The disciple recruitment ceremony had come to an end. The warriors who weren't chosen by the elders had lost the opportunity to reach the heavens in a single bound. This made many warriors feel somewhat dejected. Don't be discouraged if you weren't chosen by the elders. As long as you cultivate peacefully in the academy, you will have a chance to become an inner disciple in the future. Even becoming a seed disciple is possible. Elder Su Ling looked at the remaining people and said with a smile. Now, Ouyang Qin is one of the seed disciples. Even if he was promoted step by step from an outer disciple to a seed disciple and even entered the sky ranking, you all still have a chance. Elder Su Ling's words caused many of the cultivators below to reveal some fighting spirit in their eyes. That's right. I have also heard of Brother Ouyang's story. He was promoted step by step from an outer disciple and even defeated many elders' disciples to become a seed disciple. Yes, we can also do it. We can also compete with the elders' disciples. A few warriors spoke one after another. Each of them regained their confidence. However, when Chu Fengmian heard this story, he could only shake his head. Ouyang Chen's story was indeed good in the Northern Mang Academy. However, his rise was not something that could be achieved by 1 in 100,000 people. After all, the elders' disciples were people with high aptitudes. With more resources, the gap between them would only grow bigger. Elder Su Ling's words were just a way for everyone to regain their confidence. Alright, now go to the outer sect and stay. I have already prepared cave residences for you. In a few days, the mission will be issued. At that time, you will have to work for the academy. Elder Su Ling said and left. The remaining few Northern Mang Academy disciples led the remaining people to a mountain range. The nearby mountains were the outer sect disciples' area. There were many cave residences in the middle of the mountain range. The outer sect disciples of the Northern Mang Academy still occupied the majority, but the area they occupied was not much. For example, the area occupied by an inner sect disciple was 100 times larger than that of an outer sect disciple. The area occupied by a seed disciple was 10,000 times larger than that of an outer sect disciple. In the Northern Mang Academy, all the status and resources were determined by one's strength. The larger the area he occupied, the more spirit energy he could absorb, and the faster his cultivation speed would be. These are all ownerless cave dwellings. You can distribute them however you like. Each person is only allowed to occupy one cave dwelling. Rest for a few days and familiarize yourself with the rules of the Northern Sea Academy. After 10 days, head to the plaza and wait for your assignments. The outer disciples of the Northern Mang Academy couldn't be like the inner disciples who only needed to cultivate every day. If they also needed to take on missions, they would have a fixed mission every year. Only after completing these quests would he be able to find the time to cultivate. Although completing quests would give him certain benefits, it was far from comparable to cultivating bitterly. If he did not enter the inner sect, he would not even be able to cultivate in peace. The Northern Mang Academy's disciple left after he finished speaking, leaving Chu Fengmian's group standing in the mountain range and looking at the countless caves around them. We went through untold hardships to join the Northern Mang Academy, yet we still have to listen to orders and complete missions. We're just like slaves. Many people started to complain when they saw the disciple leave. They were all disciples of big clans. Now that they had come to the Northern Sea Academy, they were being controlled instead. They were all extremely dissatisfied. Don't talk so much nonsense. Let's concentrate on cultivating and become inner disciples as soon as possible. Only then can we get rid of these heavy missions. These caves are all different in size. Let's quickly pick a good cave dwelling. After a warrior finished speaking, he directly left to pick a cave dwelling. Although these caves were all in the same mountain range, each of them was different in size and height. Some of the caves occupied the mountain peaks with high terrains and rich spirit energy. Some of the cave dwellings were located in low-lying corners where the spirit chi was thin. There was quite a big difference between each cave dwelling. This should be the best cave dwelling in this mountain range. Chu Fengmian's spiritual sense swept around, and the surrounding caves were all in his sight. Chu Fengmian's figure moved and directly arrived at a cave dwelling halfway up the mountain. Although this cave dwelling was not at the highest point, the terrains were still high and incomparably huge. It was 4 to 5 times bigger than an ordinary cave dwelling. It was the best cave dwelling in this mountain range. Cultivating in this cave dwelling was 4 to 5 times faster than an ordinary cave dwelling. I've just entered, so this is the only way. Feeling the surrounding spirit energy, Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. Such a cave dwelling was indeed far from satisfying Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian knew that this mountain range was already far from the spirit spring. The few mountains near the spirit spring were the areas of seed disciples and even core disciples. It was far from what Chu Fengmian could reach. Now, he could only move around in this mountain range and could only find the best cave dwelling in this mountain range. After Chu Fengmian finished speaking, he immediately began to arrange all kinds of things in the cave dwelling. Naturally, he had to arrange some formations and restrictions in order to cultivate in this cave dwelling. Oh? There's actually someone occupying this cave? Just when Chu Fengmian was arranging, a voice suddenly came from outside the cave dwelling. It sounded like 2 people who came together and their goal was also Chu Fengmian's cave dwelling. Chu Fengmian's cave dwelling was the best one in the entire mountain range. Naturally, there would be many people who also had their eyes on this cave dwelling. It's actually just a kid in the wind resistance realm. One of the middle-aged men looked at Chu Fengmian and snorted in disdain. Such a trash dares to occupy the best cave dwelling? He really doesn't know what death is. Kid, get out quickly. He suddenly roared and directly punched out, breaking the restrictions that Chu Fengmian had just arranged halfway. Hearing the movement, Chu Fengmian turned his head and saw two middle-aged men. Chu Fengmian had some impression of these two people. The one who spoke just now was called Niu Feng. He was considered an expert among this batch of newcomers. His strength was close to the 9th level of the divine power realm. However, his aptitude was not high, so he was not valued by the elders. The other person was Ma Yun. His strength was extremely close to Niu Feng. The strength of these two people was originally ranked at the peak of this batch of newcomers. Now, they actually joined hands. Perhaps no one in this batch of newcomers could defeat them. Chapter 459. Now, the two of them had teamed up to snatch the cave abode. However, this cave abode was 4 to 5 times bigger than an ordinary cave abode. The spiritual qi was also extremely dense. Even if it was occupied by 2 people, the spiritual qi was much more than an ordinary cave abode. If the two of them teamed up, no one in this batch of newcomers would dare to contend with them. However, Chu Fengmian was an exception. Chu Fengmian turned his head and spoke with an extremely calm expression. "What can I do for you two?" Kid, you don't have to play dumb. Get out of this cave abode quickly. This cave abode is not for trash like you." Niu Feng looked at Chu Fengmian and mocked him. How can a mere wind-controlling realm ant occupy such a cave abode? I think the cave abode at the foot of the mountain is most suitable for you. The cave abode at the foot of the mountain was the one with the thinnest spiritual qi and the narrowest one. This cave abode is first come, first served. There is no such thing as being worthy or not. Chu Fengmian spoke indifferently. Chu Fengmian naturally knew what the two of them were thinking. Now that Chu Fengmian had come to the Northern Mang Academy, he did not want to display too much of his strength and was too lazy to fight with the two of them. Otherwise, based on what the two of them had said just now, the two of them would already be dead. However, the two of them did not take Chu Fengmian's advice to heart. Instead, they revealed a mocking expression on their faces. First come, first served. Kid, do you think a trash like you is qualified to occupy this cave abode? When Niu Feng heard Chu Fengmian's words, he could not help but laugh out loud as if he was mocking him. Not only Niu Feng, but many surrounding warriors also laughed out loud. This cave abode was the best cave abode in the mountain range. Niu Feng and Ma Yun were not the only ones who wanted to spy on it. There were also many people who gathered and observed from the side. Everyone wanted to snatch the best cave abode. In the Northern Mang Academy, strength was respected. The most important thing was strength, and strength was the reason. There was no such thing as first come, first served. If one wanted to obtain it, he could directly snatch it away. Although this cave abode was not allowed to be snatched according to the sect rules, in reality, no one would blame him if he snatched it away. Niu Feng's laughter was mocking Chu Fengmian for believing in sect rules. You're just a piece of trash in the wind-controlling realm. You'd better obediently go to the farthest corner of the cave to cultivate. Hurry up and get lost. If you don't get lost, I'll directly grab you out. Don't think it's shameful when the time comes. Niu Feng laughed heartily as he spoke. It was clear that he did not take Chu Fengmian seriously at all. Chu Fengmian, a martial artist in the wind-resisting realm, could pass the assessment, which naturally attracted his attention. But in Niu Feng's view, Chu Fengmian was at most a guy with good luck. He didn't even care about those who took advantage of the situation to pass the test. Chu Fengmian looked at Niu Feng and shook his head. You're not strong, but you talk big. Chu Fengmian didn't want to act rashly and reveal his strength, but it didn't mean that he would endure. If he endured too much, then Chu Fengmian wouldn't be Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian was an extremely arrogant person. He had already given him face once, so there was no way he would give him a second time. Really? Not strong enough? Even if my strength isn't strong, it's more than enough to deal with you. Niu Feng's face flushed with anger when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. Since you don't want to scram, I'll make you scram. Get out here. Cripple his cultivation and throw him out. After all, this is the Baimang Academy. It's not good to kill people here. Myun, who was at the side, also spoke. His words were full of threats. Brat, if you don't want to be a cripple, get out here quickly. What's the point of wasting time talking to this piece of trash? Let's just capture him. Niu Feng's face showed some impatience. Suddenly, he attacked. Spiritual energy erupted from his body and turned into a spiritual energy palm, grabbing towards the cave dwelling. Come out. When Niu Feng made his move, a giant hand formed from spiritual energy instantly and grabbed at Chu Fengmian. The strength of the spiritual energy palm sealed the space and made Chu Fengmian unable to move. It was going to take Chu Fengmian away. This brat is really courting death. He actually dared to compete with Niu Feng and Myun. Such a reckless guy. Just teach him a lesson. Niu Feng is one of the best in this batch of newcomers. He actually dares to compete with him. Let's wait here. That brat will be thrown out soon. Some of the martial artists looked at Chu Fengmian with mocking expressions. In their opinion, a wind-resisting realm martial artist dared to occupy the best cave dwelling. It was also an act of not knowing the immensity of heaven and earth. It was only right to teach him a lesson. Although Niu Feng's spiritual energy palm wasn't at full strength, it was still difficult for a level 9 divine power realm martial artist to resist. Using it to deal with Chu Fengmian, who was in the wind-resisting realm, was equivalent to a sure-kill move. Courting death. Just as the spiritual energy palm was about to reach Chu Fengmian suddenly moved. Chu Fengmian raised his right hand slowly. A surge of spiritual energy condensed on his fist and he suddenly punched out. This punch directly smashed onto the spiritual energy palm that Niu Feng had condensed. Instantly, countless cracks appeared on the spiritual energy palm. Then, it shattered layer by layer. The backlash caused Niu Feng to take a few steps back before he could stabilize his body. Are you guys trying to snatch my cave dwelling? You dare to disturb me? Very well. If I don't teach you a lesson today, do you really think that I, Chu Fengmian, can be bullied by others? Chu Fengmian snorted coldly. After forcing Niu Feng to retreat, he suddenly struck out with his palm. This palm strike was suddenly struck out silently. No one saw it clearly, but it had already turned into a palm print and blasted towards Niu Feng. Since Niu Feng was here, Chu Fengmian would make an example out of him. This would also make these people not dare to disturb Chu Fengmian again. How is this possible? But how could a trash in the wind-controlling realm break my spiritual power? Niu Feng slowly stood up and let out a roar filled with shock. When he saw Chu Fengmian's palm strike coming towards him, his body suddenly exploded. His muscles bulged and the spiritual energy in his body was stimulated. He erupted with all his strength. Raging fire Vajra body. Suddenly, countless golden flames burned on Niu Feng's body. This flame contained a faint Buddha intent. It was the real Buddha fire. With the support of the spiritual energy, Niu Feng directly turned into a real raging fire Vajra. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.